Sorrel.
Knief. Before we formally begin the agenda this evening, I think it's fitting and appropriate that we take a couple minutes to recognize the former superintendent of the Carver Public Schools, Elizabeth Sorrel. As many of you know, Liz passed away on Monday, May 29th. Liz dedicated herself to public education, 45 years in total, working in Ohio, Florida, and Massachusetts. She was a science teacher, a science district coordinator, assistant superintendent, and superintendent. She inspired her own daughters, Liesl and Catherine, to follow in her path and become educators. In my mind, her legacy in Carver is really twofold. First, it's through the literacy initiative, K through 12, but really supporting literacy and the importance of early literacy at the elementary school, specifically in grades K through 3. Liz, along with the elementary administration, really focused their attention on improving literacy skills for all of our students, and it was a passion of hers. Also, her legacy will be through the new school building. She dedicated her 10 years here as superintendent to move forward to get the building project done. Unfortunately, she will not see it completed, but I'm personally very happy that she was able to see it started. Personally, for me, Liz was a tremendous supporter. As principal of Carver Middle High School for 10 years, Liz and I worked very closely together, and she really supported me in terms of my transition to the superintendency. She was known for her photography, her wonderful cooking, and her beautiful gardens. She loved to bike. She loved to kayak. In her honor, her family has decided to have a private ceremony, but they have set up a memorial scholarship in her honor, which will be awarded to a Carver High School senior female who has an interest in pursuing science as a career. The family's thoughts are that is fitting for Liz, that she was a scientist at heart. She was passionate about, obviously she was passionate about all students, but they've decided that they feel like as a female scientist, she wants to promote and inspire other female scientists. So beginning next year, Carver Middle High School will be giving a scholarship in Liz's name for an inspiring female scientist. They have set up a website for that scholarship fund. It's sorrelforscience.org. So Sorrel, and we'll post it on our website. We'll make it publicly available to people. But it's Sorrel, the number 4, science.org. So anybody who might be interested in making a donation to Liz's foundation, we would truly appreciate that. So before we have a moment of silence, I thought maybe I'd open it up to the other committee members to see if they had anything they wanted to say in terms of Liz, and ultimately she's going to be dearly missed.
I wouldn't. Liz spent a decade in this district, dedicating herself to this district, and they say she went home. I don't know when that was because I always saw her here. She was always here. And she really dedicated herself. When you look at what she did for the educational plan, for the students of this town, I mean, music events, Liz was there. Everything that happened, she was there. She truly cared about this community. And the effort that she put into both times trying to get the school to where it was at, I think is something that we as a committee might need to talk to, and I'd rather do that when the whole committee's here. But talk about some way where we can find something to show our appreciation and gratitude for all the life that she dedicated to this district. I mean, that's 45 years. I'm 49. I was 4 when she started in this field, and she's affected thousands of children in positive ways, and I think that's incredible and deserves recognition. So I would rather do it as a full committee, but I would like to open that discussion sometime soon to
I think the school building committee is interested in that as well, as is the elementary administration.
Yeah, excellent.
I agree. I think you're in the right place. Absolutely. She dedicated many years, many hours, and she inspired thousands and thousands of students. She will be remembered.
I'm also very happy the family is sort of STEM orientated with what they're doing, because although Liz really promoted literacy here, that was her passion and what she liked to do. So
yeah,
I think that's
So, since Liz has passed, I've had a couple conversations with her daughter, Catherine, who's taking the lead in creating the scholarship. And they said they thought about it for a long while in terms of what they wanted to do to honor Liz, but then it just seemed to be natural that it would be a scholarship, and that the scholarship would go to a student who wants to pursue a science education in college.
Absolutely. That's great. I look forward to when we can have that discussion with everyone and find something to honor her countless years of service to the thousands of children that she inspired, and I'm very appreciative, so it's a great idea. Thank you.
So if we could all just take a moment of silence in honor of the former superintendent of the Carver Public Schools, Elizabeth Sorrel. Thank you.
So moving on to our agenda, we start with comments from the general public. Anyone? Sure. Come on up. Hello.
Sorry to just jump in.
That's excellent.
My name is Robin Akers, and we just had our Girl Scout bridging ceremony, and we have extra cupcakes. So this is for anyone and everyone who would like to come and have some, enjoy.
You can always count on the
Jenny,
Girl
you can have a
Scouts for
cupcake.
sweets,
Jenny,
right?
see you looking.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, right?
We also welcome the new member to our Girl Scouts, someone who hasn't bridged. She was a lifetime Girl Scout, and she never bridged. So, I'm sorry. Tanya.
Tanya Duff.
We had her bridge, so she never bridged in her life as a Girl Scout. So we had her bridge today, so she's an official Girl Scout. So thank you.
Yes. and
Another welcome to
Hey,
Carver.
thank you.
Enjoy the cupcakes and have a good meeting.
Thank you very much. Why can't all public comments be like that? Seeing nobody else jumping up, feel free to grab a cupcake if you'd like one. But comments from the APC?
Good evening, everyone. I'll be brief. I want to say thank you. This is our last school committee meeting before school gets out. I want to thank Scott, the board, the district for working with us throughout the whole school year. I want to thank my members for all their effort and support and everything they've done also this year. With the excitement of summer coming up, also brings a cold reality that several people will be out of job due to the budget crisis we face. And I want to wish them all the best of luck in their future. And thank you all.
Thank you. Student advisory. How are you, Jenna?
Good, how are you?
Very good, thanks.
Sorry, I forgot my backpack, which had that in there, so I had to retype it. So sorry if it looks unprofessional. But for our student council update, since our year is coming to a close, we've officially selected our new executive board officers. So our president is Samantha Santos, our vice president is Carrie Unulovich, secretary Brenna Lagerquist, publicity coordinator Claire Manning, spirit coordinator me, and the delegates Shelby Spinola and Joshua Kennedy. So soon we're going to be doing the firefighter clam bake and the old home day, where we just set up and help out for the community and for the firefighters. And in the summer, because school's out and we're student council for school, we don't really have a lot going on. So Josh Kennedy, Brenna Lagerquist, Carrie Unulovich, Sam Santos, and I will be going to the MASC summer camp, which is like kind of new for Carver, and like we're kind of getting, because last year only 3 people went, and now 5 people are going, and now hopefully more people are going to go, and it's a 5-day camp at Worcester State, and we come back, we bring leadership skills back to our school, and it's a workshop.
If I remember, you guys had a blast last year at that too, yeah?
MASC is so fun. I love it so much.
I think you gave us an update when you came back from that. It was.
I'm glad to. And then, so we have MASC, which is Massachusetts, and then NASC, which is national. So the National Association of Student Councils has a conference, and it's held in different places every year. And this year it's going to be in New Hampshire. And for the first time ever, we have 2 representatives, me and Brenna Lagerquist. For first time ever in Carver, we're going to be representing Carver and Massachusetts as delegates in New Hampshire.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Yeah, so excited. It's going to be
Very
so fun.
nice.
Very nice.
have a cupcake. They're very good. That's all I have.
I'm sure you'll do us proud, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to approval of minutes. Are we able to?
I want to take a look.
I don't know if we
don't
can
know.
vote on all of these.
Were we not all, were you?
Well, but
Stephanie
Stephanie
was
had to.
Yeah, I didn't.
Oh.
Yeah, but she didn't. I don't know.
My view on that is Stephanie was
Here.
and was acting as a member of the board. She was
didn't
not
vote.
yet didn't vote on issues, but I think that she is now a full member of the board and can certainly vote on the minutes because she was here in attendance for the meetings.
Okay.
Is it okay if I group all three together?
Question: did you attend the executive session after that with us?
Yes, just
Okay.
because I didn't eat cake.
All right. I would say maybe separate them. I know you did. Maybe separate them the 8th and the 12th, or take them all together. I don't. Either way is fine.
I'm going to do all three. I'd like to make a motion to accept the May 8th regular session, May 8th executive session, and May 15th special meeting minutes.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay. Communications.
Communications.
So first is really more of a public communication. We just wanted the community to be aware that at this time there is a vacancy on the Old Colony Board. My computer's a little slow in pulling up the communication. Yeah, there it is. So the appointing authority of Old Colony Regional Vocational Technical High School is accepting applications for an opening. Carver representative to the board of the Old Colony Technical High School District. It's a 3-year term, and anyone who might be interested in filling or serving that role should send a letter of interest to the Board of Selectmen at the Town Hall in Carver, Mass. So there is a position available for the school committee for Old Colony, and if you're interested in that, please reach out and notify the Board of Selectmen. The second communication is for school committee members. It's the Massachusetts Associated School Committees Summer Institute. We wanted to make people aware, so the committee members are more than welcome to attend this Summer Institute. I put the flyer in your background. It's a 2-day session. It's a Friday and a Saturday, July 28th and July 29th. Friday is an evening session only. Saturday is throughout the day. If any member of the committee is interested in attending, just let myself or Anne Marie know, and we will register you for the conference. So just let us. You don't have to let us know tonight. You can just let us know at your convenience if it's something you're interested in attending.
Is there usually, Scott, they do sort of like if you sign up by a certain time, there's a discount kind of thing? Is that
there is not a discount. So there's a single-day registration fee of $50 and a 2-day registration fee of $75. So you can either just attend one day or both. Depending, looking at the topics that are being addressed, you can make that decision if you're interested.
Thank you. So moving on, reports from the superintendent.
All right. Personnel. So we'll just give an update on some personnel moves that have happened since we last met. We had the resignation of Carrie-Anna Beckman, a middle school science teacher. Carrie-Anna is actually, she's going to be returning to Pennsylvania. She was originally from there, and she's been with us for several years, but she's looking to return to that area. Deandra Bergman, a middle high school special ed paraprofessional, has resigned. She's actually looking for, she's a certified teacher who's actually been looking for a full-time teaching position. She's done a couple long-term subs for us this year and decided that ultimately her ultimate goal is to receive a full-time teaching position or be eligible to do other long-term subs, and didn't want to wanted to resign the position as a paraprofessional. Emily Levinson, Carver Elementary School teacher and paraprofessional, has also resigned her post. She was a .3 teacher for us, and it is actually one of the positions that were a budget reduction. We reduced the .3 preschool teacher. Her other part of her job was as a paraprofessional. She's made a decision to resign the paraprofessional portion of her job. And we had the resignation of our groundskeeper, Russ Mazzilli, who's gone on to look for other opportunities. In terms of new hires, we've done some hiring for the new special ed program that we talked about developing at the middle high school. So Lindsay Gonzalez is going to be the teacher in that program. Jordan Hardiman is going to be the paraprofessional in that program. You may know Jordan as Jordan Krall. She's currently doing a long-term sub for us at the elementary school as an adjustment counselor. So that was a 1-year sub for maternity leave. So Jordan's going to stay in the district as a paraprofessional in the new program. Jennifer Kelly as the instructional coach. Jennifer Wilson as a new physical education teacher replacing Martha Murphy. Brian Witkowski, middle high school science teacher, for an opening that was available for biology. And Stephen Mahoney has been hired as the new chief technology operator for that townwide position. So we talked about the creation of a townwide position, and Stephen Mahoney has been hired in that position. I think many people know that Stephen had formerly worked for us as a technician, and we're glad to have him back as the chief technology operator for the district. That's kind of our update on personnel. Just moving on.
Moving on.
Moving on. All right. So our next 3 agenda items, I'm going to invite Mr. Siedentoff up to join us. That's monthly school building report, update on the DEP consent order and irrigation of the fields at middle high school, and an update on the accelerated repair project. We'll take them one at a time, give people up to ask questions. I'll give a brief background on the school building and the accelerated repair. Dave's going to talk specifically about the irrigations of the fields, but I figure the other 2 topics definitely tie into Dave as well. So if you had any questions about the building or the accelerated repair project, it'd be good to have Dave here. So in terms of monthly school building report. On last Monday, June 5th, the school building committee had a walkthrough of the new building with the school committee. School committee members were invited. The progress has been steady, and we remain ahead of schedule on the new elementary school. What's really nice to see is you can really start to see some of the details of the building coming along, from interior classroom spaces in the grade 2-3 wing to the look of the cafeteria and the gym. You get the real sense when you're in the building that you can see the cafeteria, you can see the gym, you can see what it's going to look like. To the outside of the building, I don't know if you've noticed that they've put up the architectural block on the grade 2-3 ring facing Route 58, so you can see the block design in terms of the cloud pattern. The cloud pattern, if we remember, is going to be around the side and the back of the building, and the front's going to be kind of clear white stone, so you get the sense of that a little bit. So ultimately, as you go through the building and you start looking at some of these pieces, every day it becomes more to life. You can stand in a section of the building and see a classroom. You can stand in a section of the building and say, this is what this hallway is going to look like. This is what the administrative wing is going to look like. This is what the gym is going to look like. So it's just impressive to see that going along. And so far, we've been doing really well. I have invited a representative from our project management team. It's either going to be Walter or Chad. Will be here in August, and they'll do a detailed review of the monthly report. So I've linked the monthly report that's established each month through the end of May in here. My intention isn't to go through that monthly report, but I think it would be a nice thing to do in August. So at the August meeting, either Chad or Walter will be here. We'll put that report up again for the community, and they'll kind of go through it in detail. The one thing I'm only going to point out one detail from the report, and we've talked about this before, but we just want to keep reiterating this, that at this time, we've spent less than 2% of our contingency. So, we're 24% of the way into the project. So the project's 24% complete, but we've only spent 2% of the contingency. And the feeling is that we're going to stay at that rate. There could be, obviously there's always things that can happen. We could always come across things that we're unaware of. They said, though, a lot of times the problems are either in the ground, and we didn't come across any problems in the ground as we were putting in the foundation. And then maybe as you get into the interior of the building, some design changes will come along, or there might be some owner betterments. There might be some things that we really think about and say we want to do this a little better. There might be a technology piece that we say we really want to add. But to be at this point with the 24% of the project completed and only spending 2% of the contingency, we're doing really well. And I really give that credit to the management team from PMA. I think they've done a real nice job working with the general contractor, CTA, to make sure the project's moving along. Dave, before I open up to questions, do you have anything you want to add to that general summary?
Nope, that was good, and yeah, there's going to be a lot happening this summer. Actually, today was their largest work crew. We had 72 workers in that building today. They were planning on completing a big concrete pour. I know you were there last week. They were actually doing the kindergarten wing Everything was going to be poured today, except the last piece was supposed to be the stage that was not going to be poured today. But they actually stopped it halfway through because the cement was hardening so fast.
It was so warm.
The heat was, yeah.
So hot today that they didn't dare risk that they couldn't keep up with it.
And they got a lot of the roof done. They were concerned with the weather that we were getting, but they've gotten a good streak, so they got a lot of the roof done down there.
And I believe that our target date is July 18th. So right now the goal is that the building will be weather tight by July 18th, which would be pretty impressive because that means in a little over a month, all the walls will be up, the roof will be on, and it will be a weather tight building.
Yeah, the biggest thing now is once they get the roof done, we'll stop any water from dripping in the building, which isn't hurting anything right now, but it'll be just a nicer environment for everyone working in there when they're not getting dripped on.
Well, they also said there's a process they have to go through that they can't do until they get that done.
Yes.
And they have, I mean, as a building committee member, they've been so communicative, and the building committee itself is constantly speaking up with many different perspectives, and it really helps them make sure they know what the community's looking for. And they've just done a fantastic job. The designers, PMA, the construction, the committee, it's just been ahead of schedule and right on track all the way through. And even as we go along, that 2% is fantastic. There are some change orders on the board, but one of their points was that most of them from here on out should be relatively small. They'll pile up, but nothing, as you said, beyond that big part. But there was talk about which isn't totally finalized yet, but falling underneath the state's requirement of $299 per square foot, which
that is a possibility that
which will be
final
100%
construction project would fall into $299 per square foot.
Yeah, which will change the town's put in dramatically in a very nice and positive way. Everything's just gone great with it so far. It's been right on track the way it needs to be.
Over the summer.
Yeah.
Over the summer, you're going to see a lot of changes. You're going to see the building progress. I was working with them today. The week after next week, so when school's out the beginning of that week, we're going to be taking down the storage and maintenance garage because that has to be removed this summer in order to make way for underground utilities. They're going to kind of cross there. And also the modular on the end of Pod 4 is going to be removed. So all that stuff is happening in the background, so that can happen right away so they can keep moving along.
And there is talk, because it is progressing really quick. The committee decided at our last meeting there's a subcommittee to determine what to do with the old school as far as ceremonies and the letting go and the moving forward and how that was going to work out and what parts may be used and what not. So that's something that committee is going to start to talk about some, and community involvement is definitely going to be important in that and what people would like to see and hear. So if people do have input, I don't know if we have a date for our next building committee meeting yet.
We have not set a date for the next building committee at this time.
And we're looking at that summer, a short window towards that summer of 2018 before that's actually going to occur. But I think the committee was really looking to try and get some input from people and see what they'd like to, because it's been a building that's a part of the community for a very long time. So it's going to go down quick, and things will start rolling really fast as they have been through the process. So it's a very proactive committee, I think. Everybody's kept ahead of looking, well, what if, and a lot of what ifs whenever we're meeting, and I think it's been really beneficial to the way the project has moved. But community involvement is definitely important, and hopefully we'll be able to get some feedback on that to see what people might want to do. But on the other foot, Dave, my daughter is in 6th grade and was saying, gee, I don't know what they're doing up on the roof over there. What's going on the roof over there?
Yes, so we have the middle high school project going on as well.
Any other questions on the new elementary school? Thoughts?
That's great.
So I want to give us an update on the DEP consent order for the new water treatment system and the irrigation of the fields at the middle high school.
So where we are with that, as you know, per the consent order, we can no longer irrigate, which was unfortunately probably one of the driest summers we've had in the last century, maybe not that long, but we had some issues with our fields last year. So we actually have 4 new wells installed out in the fields now, which are going to provide irrigation. So basically, the irrigation that was the 26 acres, we have 26 acres of athletic fields. I don't know, it's probably around 18 acres of that was irrigated. We're going to tie all that back in, taking off the potable water and putting on dedicated irrigation wells. The wells are in. I have met with and contracted a company to actually physically dig up and tie in, so we have to marry the new wells to the existing irrigation at certain tie-in points. I met with the contractor 2 weeks ago. He told me we were probably about 3 weeks out. I reached out to him today hoping to come here with a definitive date for a start date for you. That didn't happen, but I'd say we're probably a week out. But all this will happen over the summer, so we also have to move, which is a big job. I have to get the electricity out to the new wells, which are in the fields, which we have no power out there now, and we also have to move all the zone time clocks, which is probably about 20 zones of control wiring that has to be relocated. All that will be relocated out to the old wastewater treatment plant, which will be our new storage building, which we actually have bid openings tomorrow on that project for the repurposing of that building. So that's going on as well.
So I know Andrew's disappointed to not be here for this conversation.
So the long-term goal is over the summer, the piping will be done, the electricity will be done. Fall is the best time to reseed and get everything going. And then we're going to have to come up with a plan once we do that. Once we reseed, everybody, grass starts growing right away, but if it gets heavy use, it's not going to last. So we're going to have to come up with a staggered plan to field usage of how we're going to get these fields established. As far as
because
no-use
fall's
policy.
fall's a big soccer time also.
Yeah, so we may have to, if we have 2 soccer fields here, we may have to shut one down, get that one established, then switch over, do the next one in the spring. So we'll be working on that plan. And that also ties into the potable water. So we have full DEP approval on our engineered plans. They are working on getting that out to bid, as that will have to go out to public bid, that project. And what that is the new manganese treatment system, which involves equipment at the middle high school, and this is all for the potable water, the drinking water. And then also we're going to update the type of system we have as well. It was a good time to tie that in. As you know, the existing system is 30 years old. It's outdated technology, and it's time for its replacement, being a mechanical system. So we're going to go to variable frequency drives, manganese treatment that's similar to what the town's municipal water has now that has been working out. So we're trying to keep things uniform for ease of management. So should be happening in the fall. We have a DEP deadline of December 30th, I believe, on that to have that installed, which we should have no problems meeting that deadline.
And Dave, just to be clear, there's a lot of new and update, and all these monies have been funded already in advance, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was actually going to mention that in terms of the irrigation of the fields and the new wells, that was actually paid for through the Capital Outlay Reserve Fund. So we went to Capital Outlay during this year's reserve. They decided to use their reserve fund from the FY17 fiscal year to pay for the wells and the irrigation system. And then the portable water in that system that was actually at as part of the town meeting vote. The town meeting decided to tie that into the accelerated repair project because remember, some of the numbers changed on the accelerated repair project. The bids came in really well. They came in below expectations, and that piece was tied in. And the reality was we were under consent order to do that. That project had to happen. There wasn't really an option for the committee or the town, and would the town actualize through that town meeting vote some of the savings from the estimates and the bids on the accelerated repair project to tie that project into it to pay for it. So I'm glad you mentioned that, and I was going to touch on that as well in terms of how those projects were being funded.
Well, and I know Dave's going to go into the accelerated repair project in just a minute, a little bit, yeah. But this is my 6th year on this committee, and I remember joining this committee and wondering, how are we going to build a new elementary school and do all of these things that need to be done at the high school, because there was just the list stayed the same year after year after year. And I really have to applaud this town and this community for coming together and being inventive and creative and proactive and making all of these things happening, because the new elementary school is being built, and all of those issues and concerns that were sort of major issues and concerns are all being addressed. and it's all being done with cooperation between capital outlay, the town, and a lot of hard work by people to try and find the right financial situations to make that happen. So I think on behalf of the school committee, I would really like to thank the town and all their efforts to make this occur, because our schools are really getting a lot done at the current moment of things that have needed to be done for quite a while. So before you begin on that, Dave, I just wanted to say that, because I'm just really excited about it. I think it's fantastic to see it happening.
And I mean, not to totally counteract that, the only thing I do want to remind people is that I think the town has invested heavily in capital projects, and the town's made decisions that these things need to happen. Some of that funding, though, does come at the expense of the general operating budgets of the school, and so we did have to take some serious layoffs this year as a result of the town's decisions on allocations of funds. So a lot of support has gone into capital projects for the school, but for other parts of the town as well,
also,
for the town as a whole. And I think that my point of advocacy going forward is maybe that we need to look at that and make that transition, and maybe some money shifting away from some of these capital projects, because we're really reaching a point of getting the capital projects we need done, and having that money shift back over to operating budgets to better support the school's daily operations.
A conversation that will never end, though, man. That's right.
I didn't want to forget that piece of it.
I happen to see both sides, and I think perhaps maybe the best thing for Carver in the future is a nice balance between school and capital projects.
Yes.
It was, unfortunately, the school had some of the capital projects had gone way too beyond in years and should have been addressed years earlier.
Right.
The good news is they are being addressed, but perhaps as an entire community moving forward, there's more balance. So perhaps we can all work.
Well, Music Boosters were very adamant, I think, throughout this whole process, and coming here and standing up and advocating throughout what we did. Every meeting they were here, somebody was here representing. And as a building committee member who stood in the new building and looked at those 2 new music rooms going, yeah, but we have 1 music teacher now. We do have a lot to work with as a town. We have to start to shift things back in the focus to an area it needs to be. But I understand, and I know that there's positives and negatives that we need to work with, but I think there's definitely a gratitude towards getting these things that if we didn't address them, we were basically at a max time, where if we didn't do it was just going to get a lot worse.
And obviously a thing like the irrigation at the middle high school, the capital outlay decided to use the reserve fund in that way. If they didn't use that reserve fund, it was going to be used someplace else or go back to the town.
In the town, right.
And so we thank them for making that decision and not having that responsibility fall on the school. Because the reality was that's something that needed to happen. As part of this DEP consent order, the irrigation system had to be separated from the water system, because the old design of our system had, and Dave's much more of an expert on this than I am, so he's probably talking about it, but ultimately the old design of the system had both those things intertwined. And the DEP consent order said your irrigation system cannot be tied into your portable water. So it needed to happen, but it doesn't mean it didn't have to.
I think as those selectmen and school committee joint meetings continue, we need to make our focus a little more focused, I think, here on out.
Absolutely.
Sorry to steal your thunder, Dave. Right back to you, though.
And just to be clear, the separation was not because of safety. There was never caused any issues with
water is safe.
Unsafe drinking or anything. It was for different reasons.
We haven't heard that in a couple of months, actually, Dave. You haven't been around.
But the water is safe.
So the accelerated repair project. So they started on the roof last week, and they're moving along. If they didn't melt up there today, they'll be back there tomorrow. So they started on the high school gym roof, which they are just about finishing up, probably finish it up tomorrow. So they're moving this week to determine areas. We wanted to get a jump on this before school ended. So hopefully, if the weather cooperates, that'll be the only setback. They'll be done. The roof will be completely done before we come back to school late August. That is the goal. The windows. So as you know, we're doing an entire roof 100%. Every exterior window, every exterior door, and every mechanical thing that has to do with the heating in the boiler room. So they're working on the roof. The windows, they're going to start on the 21st next week. And the doors will go along with that. And then the new boilers, the mechanical room has already been gutted. We allowed them to start May 16th, and they did. The old boilers are out. All the pumps, everything that pertains to that is gone. The new boilers were put in place. They were rigged into place last Thursday, and they're in there working now. They expected the mechanical should be done within a month. The boiler will be operational. I don't think we'll
Interesting
need
enough,
it,
the
but-
last couple of weeks, a couple people told me that they were actually looking for heat, but there wasn't any
Got cold there for a
because the
little bit.
boiler, there were no boilers, so there was no heat. It wasn't an option.
So they're
We'll take that weather over today and tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. So everything is progressing along good there with that project.
Yeah, the only piece I want to add on to that is just to say that during school they're working on the roofs over the gyms. It has some level of impact because they're over the gym. The gym's classes have been displaced, and actually with the rain, sometimes they had to stay inside and go to the cafeteria, go someplace else because they couldn't stay in the gym while they were working above the gym. That was on the high school side. And their next move, they're going to move over to the middle school portion of the gym. So they're going to do the middle school gym. That does impact a couple of classrooms because where the break in that roof isn't directly over the gym. It actually goes a little forward towards the old addition where the addition was added on when the gym was added on. That's the break in the roof line. So they're Friday this week, Monday and Tuesday next week, they could be working directly over a couple classroom spaces. Obviously, those teachers have been made aware of that, and we're going to make some decisions with Mrs. Hawley and the staff whether they make a decision to stay in those classrooms or to go to a different piece in the building. We have a little bit of flexibility on that because middle high school is starting final exams. So they'll be beginning half days on Thursday, I believe. So by the time they get over to that section of the building, there'll actually be some classroom space available in different places of the building. But I wanted people to have an understanding that there might be a couple of classrooms that has an impact. There's no impact. No one's in. It's just sound. The reality is they're going to be on the roof right over your head, working on that.
And that
roof.
may get delayed. They're talking now 80% chance of thunderstorms tomorrow afternoon, so they can only tear up what they can replace, and they're looking at the weather. And in the morning, if there's over a 30% chance of rain,
They don't work.
They don't work.
So we're really looking at. I think at the most it would be Friday, Monday, Tuesday, and more. There's a chance could just be Monday and Tuesday next week. Monday, but we just wanted the community to be aware that there could be might be a couple of students coming saying, "Hey, they were working right over my head today."
So students
and those are actually 7th and a couple 7th and 8th grade classrooms. Besides that, I don't know if Dave, you have anything to add?
No, the only
or any
other
questions?
from the scope of the original project, some things we're looking at tying in as well is when you drive to the front of the building, the metal paneling that encompasses the library, the wall of the planetarium that faces the front road as you're driving in, and there's metal paneling on the back side of the building. We're looking at having all that painted as well. So basically the whole exterior of the building will be fresh.
painting to go with like the windows or the new windows, or
Yeah, and it came about because the windows that are going in that metal paneling, the flange that fits over the trim is not exactly the same. That painting, to the best of my knowledge, is original. So it's 30 years old, so it's faded.
yeah.
And when we took some off, you can see you're going to have a difference. So we put out a price proposal for it. The price came back. It looks good. So we can have all that painted as well. So the whole exterior of the building will be fresh at that point. And also the two main entrances, there's some stucco over those. We're looking at having that taken down and redone. Now's the time to do it, if we can. And also the lettering as well.
Yeah, and same as the elementary school project. I mean, so far, I think we've only had 2 change orders on the accelerated repair project so far. I don't have the exact breakdown on the percentage of overall cost and contingency, but at this time, I think there's only been 2 change orders. So things have been moving along without a lot of issues or concerns.
Yep.
Nice to see you, Dave. Thank you, man.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Dave?
I see you staying busy. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
So now to you.
All right. So the next piece I'd like to introduce is what we've decided to call the educational blueprint. And if Meredith could pull it up, that would be great. So we've spoken a couple times during the year about the former district improvement plan, and that in many ways the former district improvement plan was really a listing of everything that happened in the district. And our thought process on that a little bit was that definitely there's a value to listing everything you do. But in terms of actually having it drive change or having people think about these are the things that are most important to us, sometimes I think that focus was lost a little bit. I didn't do it for tonight, but as I've made presentations about this in other venues, I've brought along the current district improvement plan, and it is 27 pages. So as we load it up, it takes a while to load up, and we watch it sit and load for a second. And then you go through the 27 pages. It's just a lot of information. As I said, it's the work of the district. It's everything that's happening. And for myself personally, even as the principal of the middle high school, when we were building the school improvement plans, because your school improvement plan is supposed to tie into district improvement plan, I always was a little bit reticent to say, yeah, but I don't want to make a list of everything we do, because I really want to talk about these are the areas we're looking to change or make improvements or have something be different, versus just a listing of everything we do. So philosophically, this is a direction I feel like we should move in, to have it's a little broader, it's broader, it's smaller, it's focused. So the goal of this plan, which would in essence replace the district improvement plan, is to identify the big picture objectives that we'd like to work towards achieving over the next 3 to 5 years. The plan outlines a revised district vision, a core values and belief statement, a new statement called a theory of action, and 4 strategic objectives, which I'll take you through all this in a little bit. The school improvement plans that are going to be presented after the blueprint are aligned with the 4 strategic objectives outlined in the district plan. So the school improvement plans do tie back and align directly with this plan. And before I actually look at the document itself, I want to talk a little bit about the process we went through in terms of revising it. So our administrative leadership team has been meeting throughout the year, and throughout the year we've been looking at the development of this plan. We've come back to it a few times to just check in and see where we are. And we started by looking at the original mission and vision statement in the district improvement plan and said, how do we want this to look different? We had some conversations and discussions around where we really want to see the district improve. I also went out and presented at an elementary faculty meeting and a middle high school faculty meeting in the fall. And at that meeting, I showed people the former district improvement plan. I talked about my vision of what I wanted this plan to look like, and I asked them to give feedback on the current core values, the current vision statement, the current mission statement, and then just some ideas of areas they think we as a district could improve. I took that. I also presented to the elementary PTO. This also been presented at the middle high school school council, and at the school council at the elementary school now. So this has been brought out to various audiences to get feedback and a sense from, as was the old plans, the district improvement plan, the old vision statement, the old core values. And so as we've been going along throughout the year, my goal has been to look at what was in place, kind of try to outline a vision for what I see going forward to be in place, and then get feedback from as many constituents as possible in terms of developing that plan. So I took all this information, made a draft of this plan, brought it to the administrative leadership team. They gave me feedback. We revised it. We met a couple times. Then we brought it to the middle high school faculty. They gave me feedback. Brought it to elementary faculty again this spring. So I've presented at meetings in both the fall and the spring. Brought that document back to them and just gauged people's level of support and took some feedback. Based on the faculty meetings, we made some changes. We didn't incorporate every change that's been suggested by every group, because obviously, people have different and varying ideas. And as I looked at different groups, I looked for ideas that were consistent. If people had the same themes of this is unclear, I'm not sure about this, I don't fully understand this, I don't understand the goal, I don't understand the way this is worded, I recommend this wording. And there were some themes and some patterns that developed by taking that information. And then I took that information, made a final revision and had the all team review it just a week ago and say, do they feel comfortable going forward with this document? So that's kind of the process we went through, and then we'll take a look at the document itself. I'll be looking for a committee feedback and eventually maybe a vote from the committee of support or non-support or recommendations in terms of the overall blueprint, the overall plan itself. Before I say that, I am going to say that before we get into the document itself, I want to state that this is still a work in progress. And I might be getting ahead of myself, and it'll make more sense when I get into the document, but I'll say it first, and I'll probably say it again because I like to repeat myself, is that ultimately our goal is that for each of these strategic objectives and for our school improvement plans that are going to align with them, that have strategic priorities, the goal is to present this to the faculty in the fall and ask for faculty support in terms of actually developing an action plan for the implementation of each of these priorities. So a natural question you might have tonight is, well, this doesn't seem real specific in terms of the actions that are going to take place. So I'm acknowledging that up front that that's the next step. The next step is to create kind of the overall format, create the overall vision, and then from that vision develop the action plans. And then I'd love to have staff involved in the development of the action plans for each of these initiatives. So that's my summary of how this document was created. So let's take a look at the document itself. I'm not going to read each piece of it to you, but the revised vision statement, a lot of the core concepts here came from the previous vision statement, just took people's recommendations. The previous vision statement, and I didn't put it up as a comparison, it was a little more wordy. There was more verbiage to it. So this is a streamlined version. Some of the feedback that we got through the process is this should even be more streamlined, but it is a streamlined vision statement. We struggled with the name a lot. I skipped myself for a second. One thing we talked about was having a tagline. So you see under Carver Public Schools, it says, cultivating empowered learners and responsible citizens. We wanted a one statement phrase of what are we going to want to be about. And what we said ultimately we want to be about as a school district, cultivating empowered learners and responsible citizens. We want people to leave the school system upon graduation believing that they can do anything, believing they can learn anything. And I shouldn't even, believe is probably not a great word. We want them to be able to do anything. We want them to be able to, we don't know what that is yet. They may not know what it is yet. But we want them to leave with a sense that they have a set of skills that empowers them to be able to function in any aspect, in any realm of life, society, job, family. And it's a pretty encompassing task. Now that's happening K through 12, but that's the goal at the end. What we're doing here as the Carver Public Schools is cultivating empowered learners and responsible citizens. We struggle with a name. We had a lot of conversation about what's the name of this document. Is it a strategic plan? Like, well, no, it's not really a strategic plan. Is it a district improvement plan? We could call it the district improvement plan, but there was a little bit of a discussion of, well, we don't want to confuse people because we had this old document called the District Improvement Plan. We wanted people to understand this document was a little bit different. So the name that we eventually came up with is Educational Blueprint. This is our blueprint for how we're going to cultivate empowered learners and responsible citizens. This is how it's going to happen. The core values statement, those really come from that came from a poll of faculty and the administrative leadership team in terms of what did they believe were the core values of the district, and looking at the past document and how they themselves feel about value education. I will say that the one word in here that was a little bit a lot of discussion about was the word successful. And in the end, we decided to stay with successful, but we could definitely take feedback on that in terms of all students can be successful. And some people felt successful was maybe too broad. What does that really mean, that you can be successful? And that varies for other people. But in the end, we determined that that is true. There is a variance in terms of what success is. We want to prepare students to be successful to the greatest extent of their possible ability. There was a little sense that might be too broad of a term. Learning is ongoing and lifelong. I will read the core values. Decisions should be made in the best interests of students. That was an interesting discussion too, and that came from the faculty. Our original statement said decisions are made in the best interests of students. And the faculty, at both the middle high school and the elementary school, both people gave the faculty feedback saying that should is a stronger term. And most people would respond and say, is should really a stronger term than are? But if you read the statement, decisions are made in the best interest of students. It was kind of almost a statement like, hey, yeah, we do that already. Where people were feeling like, you know what, it really should be, that we should always say, you know what, this decision needs to be made in the best interest of students. And that should is actually more powerful than are. That are may be too much of a blanket statement, almost blasé. Yeah, we do that. We make decisions in the best interest of students. But really, we should be saying that all the time we should always be making making decisions in the best interest of students. Everyone should be treated with dignity and respect. And then school, home, and community partnerships are vital for continuous learning and growth. The next piece is called the theory of action. And the concept of the theory of action says a generic statement that should be aligned with your strategic objectives that states if we do these things, students will, if this happens, then this will occur. And ultimately, what we want to have happen with the end in mind, we want students to be empowered to reach their full potential. So what's our theory of action? What are we saying we believe needs to happen for students to be empowered to reach their full potential? And what we're saying is we believe we need to create an environment that's safe, supportive, and inclusive. We need to engage the Carver community in learning. We need to inspire teachers to be the best they can be at all times. And we need to have effective leadership. And the community needs to sustain our educational level. That's a lot of things, but we're saying if all those things happen, if all those things come together, then our students will be empowered to reach their full potential. And what you'll see is that those concepts are tied back to the strategic objectives below. So we've identified 4 strategic objectives, which you're going to see in a few minutes the school improvement plans are aligned to. Support safe schools. To sustain a safe, supportive, inclusive learning environment and ensure that we are addressing the physical, social, emotional, and behavioral needs of students to maximize students' capacity to achieve. Engage the community, to foster relationships with the community so that parents and community members are engaged partners in the educational process. Enhance teaching and learning. To sustain a system-wide environment wherein exceptional instruction and student achievement are the core of our work and realized through collaborative action. And finally, leverage leadership, policy, and funding to strategically support the school community with mindful leadership and sustainable funding to ensure the highest level of student achievement through well-managed resources. So we're identifying these things as over the next 3 to 5 years, we want to make sure these things happen within the district. We want to make sure that our schools are always safe. But safe is beyond safe. We're talking about, we're going to look at addressing students' social, emotional needs, physical needs, behavioral needs. We want to engage the community. It's so vital that we all work together in terms of having a student reach its full potential. We're going to enhance teaching and learning. We're going to try to create an environment in which student achievement and exceptional instruction are the core of our work. I personally particularly like that phrase. I didn't write it, I didn't create it, but I particularly like that one resonates with me. And then we had a lot of discussion around this leverage, leadership, policy, and funding. Some of the teacher feedback was that's not really teacher focused or centered. What does leverage mean in terms of what are we really looking for here? I think the overall statement in our mind is saying, yeah, it goes back to our earlier discussion about the decisions being made in the town in terms of shifting monies from capital to supporting operating budgets. That we have to leverage all these things that we need to do, from capital projects to investing in our schools to technology to supporting teachers to creating safe environments. And there's limited resources to do all these things. So how do we as a leadership team look at these things, analyze them, make decisions, and push the community to support us in making those decisions that are in the best interest of students? And I do think it's more of a district goal, and it may be something that's less, might be less of an opportunity to have a teacher, third grade teacher in their classroom tie into this and say, I'm going to do something in my class today that's going to support this objective. I'm not saying the teachers can't support this objective. Surely they can, through the advocacy of the APC, through teachers coming together to help support the school district in terms of engaging the most funding and the best possible funding that we can have. Teachers can certainly be involved in it, but it may not be directly involved in day-to-day operations in a class. But the big picture is to long-term support what's happening in the classrooms on a daily basis through that sustainable funding. All right, I've gone off enough. I guess at this point I will open it up to questions from the committee in terms of the overall goal. And I guess I'd be thinking about so in my mind the big picture is this is a 2-page document that I'm hoping people can tie into. So my goal would be that a year from now, a teacher could say, if someone said, well, what are your objectives? What do you want to achieve? That you could walk up to someone and they say, we're going to work towards creating safe schools. We're always working to have exceptional instruction where student achievement is the core of our work. Sorry, I keep going back to that one. We want to engage the community. That's what we're doing. We're outreaching. We want to engage the community in education. These are our strategic goals. These are the things we want to do because we believe if we do these things, we're cultivating empowered learning and responsible citizenship if these things are happening in our schools. And where right now I don't know if there's that buy-in to this is what's in the district improvement plan and this is how the district improvement plans ties to making the educational system within Carver a better place. So this is much more big picture, but it's been more big picture, but in some ways it's much more focused. And the goal would be, and you're going to see from the school improvement plans, their initiatives are going to tie into these 4 core strategic objectives, and then the next step would be let's develop some action plans around those strategic initiatives, which that work would be beginning in the fall. So with that, I will open it up to questions, comments, recommendations, concerns.
Gina?
It's a lot of work, and thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
it looks great. I just went to Charting the Course Conference seminar for new school committee members, and one of the things they spoke about is what is the most important responsibility that you have as a school committee member, and it was student achievement, something that they kept bringing up throughout the entire course of the day. And this is great. It touches on a lot of points that we discussed, and including teachers and students, and it looks great. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
I think, Scott, just creating this document supports your third elevating teaching and learning, because if I'm correct, under your strategic priorities, that's where you're going to take that input and create those specific steps.
Correct.
That will lead more that way. But you're getting
and the principals are going to present
involved.
that a little bit in terms
so
of
your staff, everybody's more involved in that process and the development of it, which is going to elevate their desire to achieve that more. And I think the format's fantastic that way.
I don't know if I'll achieve my dream, and the teachers haven't necessarily heard my dream yet. They'll hear it in the fall. Tammy's hearing it right now, and Tom's hearing it right now. My dream a little bit would be that for each strategic priority that's outlined to the school improvement plans, that every teacher in the district would at least support in some way being on the action team to create those, create the action plans around that priority, even if it's just one. So if there's one particular priority that teacher could, and obviously we would give some professional development time in terms of making some of those decisions and making that action plan, but then that's all getting everyone focused and involved in our plan for improvement, I think would be a really valuable thing for the district.
All right, that just bringing that back, I'm so happy you're here, Meredith, because that was one of Liz's strengths, I think, is understanding the importance of professional development, and you were here with her for a lot of making sure that process was set right so that can continue in that direction. To your other point, Scott, with the fourth one, the leveraging leadership, this is a district plan. And I think, like, you can see your perspective being different from where you're at now as to where you were when you were in administration. And I think this is a really important part of making sure, from your perspective, that this isn't going to offer teachers ways to get into the plan, as you're saying, but for the district as a whole, that's an important piece to make sure that stays prioritized to keep us in the right direction.
Yeah, I don't know how we couldn't talk about trying to leverage decisions we're making around the funding of the school district at this time.
Especially the positions we're in right now.
It's just such an
Exactly.
overwhelming issue for the school community at this time.
Without a doubt, and I think the format is great. And I have to say, just to go back to it, I kind of, when you were talking about the word successful, I kind of like that because you said it's broad, but in a sense, education is a broad paintbrush. It's not the same for every student, so you're offering the opportunity of success to be many different things at the same time. The words below in your core values were, I'm sorry, not in the core values, in the theory of action, when you talk about empowering them to reach their full potential. That's what success is, and to each student that's going to be something slightly different. So I like the word because I think it offers that opportunity for diversity there.
And I would just like to thank the administrative leadership team for their efforts, because as they know, they've seen this document a few times over the past few months. Clearly, I'd like to thank the staff and the teachers for allowing me to come and meet with them twice during the school year and take 2 faculty meetings to focus on the development of this document.
I'd like to thank them for their dedication to that, and also what they're about to present to us too, because that's added on top of this more specifically for them and what they're looking for in their schools.
So if the committee is willing, I'm struggling with words tonight. If the committee is willing, I would like to have a vote in support of the development of the educational blueprint.
We discussed this in that summer program that we did, and I know that Andy and Andrew were both pretty on board with this idea and this philosophy. So
yeah, I didn't actually mention that. This really started our first discussion of this really occurred, so the community knows. We did a summer retreat last year,
yeah.
And I had the committee give feedback on our current documents and what they looked like and the structure and your thoughts about it. And that was really the beginning point of the development of this plan.
I don't think they'd be remiss if we voted to approve this. I think they'd support our decision.
Would you like a motion?
I would gladly accept the motion.
I would like to make a motion to approve the educational blueprint for the Carver Public Schools.
Second.
Any further discussion at all? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. It's unanimous. Thank you all for the work on this. I think this is the simplification of this, Scott, I think is going to go really well to help move people forward in a focused way, as you said.
So at this time, I would like to invite up elementary school principal Ruby Maestas, who's going to present the elementary school improvement plan, which is as I said, is tied into this document.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello.
So, actually, first, if it would be all right with you if I just took a minute to just briefly mention Liz and her impact.
Please.
So, from the first day that I met Liz, which happened to be July 1st, 2009, that's when I was hired by the town of Carver, the school of Carver, the public schools, as an assistant principal. So from that day forward, Liz was always very supportive, and she demonstrated that support by always listening very attentively. She was an active listener no matter what time of day, no matter whether it was the evening or the weekend, and there was something that I needed to talk to her about and problem solve. She focused her attention and she helped to problem solve. When I spoke with her about the elementary school project and the concerns, she always listened, and she said, yes, you're right, we have to bring that forward again. We have to do everything we can to fight for a school for our children of Carver, for all of our students. So she never let up on that. And for that, I'm truly grateful. She wanted the absolute best educational environment for our children, your children of Carver. And I will miss Liz very much. But it brings a smile to my face. Also, just to have worked with her and to see the impact that she has made.
She definitely lived when she lived.
She did. So, thank you very much. I would like to get started now on our school improvement plan. And first, I'd like to just share with you who our school council members are. So this year on the council as teacher representatives are Tish Leatherby, Leslie O'Reilly, Susanna Warren, and myself. Our parents on the council are Andrea Blackwell, Kimberly Clark, Diana Wiley, and Stephanie Clardy was with us on the council for 80% of the school year, and she resigned from her post in April. Other participants that were present throughout the school year on our school council were Tanya Duff, Paula Foley, Jen Kelly, and Michelle Taylor. So as Mr. Knief mentioned to you the process for the educational blueprint, I wanted to share with you a little bit about what that looked like at the elementary school. So once we had worked with this with Mr. Knief on the blueprint, and the priorities were outlined at the elementary school level, we were able to focus further on those priorities. So we did this by conducting a survey. So staff members responded to the survey, and then the school council reviewed and further developed these priorities. And as Mr. Knief had mentioned, that the staff contributed to these priorities several times throughout the school year. So our first under safe and supportive schools at the elementary school, we have a goal of continuing to enhance school-wide PBIS, the model, to increase expected behaviors and a sense of community. So what I've decided to do with this for tonight is give you some idea. While we don't have action steps at this point, I wanted to give you some idea of the dialogue that's taking place under each of these priorities. So what is enhancing PBIS? It's working with the staff and the students to build our internal school community. It's things like working with our student council members, encouraging student leadership opportunities amongst all of our students, having our older students be role models for our younger children, whether it's at speaking opportunities at assemblies, or helping to motivate students when they're on the bus, getting off the bus, helping in roles as student ambassadors. We'd really like to improve that new program. And one idea that we have is having our student council members trained to give tours in the new school. So at the end of the school year next year, or as soon as we can get into the new school, we want to be able to take these students throughout the school, teach them everything about that new school, and then they in turn, when we have new students join our school community, they will be assigned, along with an administrator or a staff member, to take the family on a tour. So things like that. And then the other dialogue discussion that's taking place is increasing opportunities for movement throughout the day, or at the beginning of the day when they get off the bus. Again, the idea is to encourage a sense of belonging and connectedness, and increase the knowledge, skills, and overall disposition of students so that they can be responsible and productive members of the school community. So what I've done is to give you an idea of what we're thinking, is again outlined under every priority, what we're talking about and the benefit of each. So I'll go to the next. Continue to increase social emotional learning competencies among our students. So what are the social emotional competencies? The DESE has outlined 5 competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So what we would like to do or continue to do at the elementary school is promote social emotional health and well-being, and we will do this through providing professional development to our teachers. So you've heard me talk a lot over the last 3 years about responsive classroom, morning meeting. All of those things really help to increase social emotional learning for students. Ultimately, these skills will equip our students to better navigate the global world and just sort of the unknown. And also, it'll reduce the unexpected behaviors that you sometimes see with students on the school bus or in more of the unstructured times like recess and lunch and going from one place to another in the hallway. Any questions so far? All right, I'll keep going. So with the next goal under community engagement, continue the development of focused outreach and community partnerships. So we've talked about working with our preschools, our daycare providers, providing parenting support. This year we were able to start, thanks to the hard work of Mrs. Foley, to bring to the elementary our first parenting class. We were able to offer 3 sessions. We had a presenter come from South Shore Hospital to work with parents. We had, I believe, 5 or 6 parents who signed up, and we were able to provide childcare by coordinating with high school interns. So again, this is that outreach community partnership, ultimately to help improve and educate parents, organizations like preschools, so that they're more knowledgeable and students then are more prepared as they enter kindergarten. So partnering with the rec department, YPAC, YMCA, developing relationships with community organizations, that's really what we're talking about under community engagement. So I'm liking this, actually. The next one, increasing home support by strengthening parent-teacher relationships. So what does this really look like? So improving our parent-teacher conferences, strengthening those conferences by giving more specific feedback to our families about how they can support their children at home, and improving home support. And sometimes that may look like staff members supporting students or families in the evening, whether it's a phone call or sometimes it might be case management. In some cases, we have ELL students whose families really need support in the evening. So that's part of what we're talking about. So while I don't have specific action steps, I at least wanted to give you an idea of what we're looking at. So under the next one, which is elevate teaching and learning, continue to provide professional development that's in line with teacher feedback and student need. So when our staff was surveyed this year, the 2 top priorities for professional development were technology and social emotional learning. So actually today, Meredith presented at our faculty meeting, a leader-learner tech model, which would include teachers that were willing to gain more skills in technology, and they then would receive a Chromebook and go through a series of modules and then provide some training to teachers, because the idea is we need to be prepared for the technology that we're going to have in the new school. So a lot of what we're talking about tonight is getting ready, putting things in motion for when we move in August of 2018. So I won't go too much more into the leader-learner model. I'll let Meredith talk a little bit more about that, but I really like that model. I think it'll work well for us.
And the only thing I'll jump in on the professional development piece is that we have asked Meredith to make a presentation for our August meeting, kind of outlining plans for professional development for next year based on a survey of staff, and we're going to be refining the professional development plan. So that will be coming at the August meeting.
Right, and then the next priority, social emotional learning. So we've talked a lot about responsive classroom. There's also a another, I'm not sure what to call it, but program, Calm Classroom. It is a program that teaches teachers how to incorporate mindfulness in the classroom throughout the day. So we have 2 teachers that were able to present a brief sort of synopsis of what that could look like for us next year. Ms. Stahl and Mrs. Sexton have done some training in Calm Classroom. You may have heard that, but basically it's mindfulness and teaching children how to stop, listen to their breathing, learn how to just follow their breathing, and focus, which ultimately will help them be better prepared for learning. So on to the next goal. Continue to provide UDL training, coach, and support. So that's another area where teachers responded that they'd like to receive some more PD on. We actually spent a good deal of time with UDL this last year. And basically...
Could you expand on what that is a little bit, maybe, for...
Yes. So UDL, I guess if you think about it this way, it's, there's 3 principles. So, and I might get these sort of backwards, but it's the what of learning, the why of learning, and the how of learning. And so with the what of learning, teachers are providing multiple means of representation to the children. So the idea here is that multiple methods of representation allow students to make connections, and it really helps them to understand more concepts easier. So some children learn with visuals, but some children really need, some children just learn well by listening auditorily. So training the teachers to provide the learning in multiple modes of representation. And then the next principle is the how of learning. So basically, providing students are able to provide responses or express what they've learned in multiple ways. Some children are able to do it very well in written format, but some children or learners need other ways to do it. So so that's really the next principle. And then the last one is the why of learning. And so here it's providing multiple options for engagement. And in this format, students, think about it this way. So some students may be highly engaged through using technology. Some students may be highly engaged listening to a presenter. Some students may be highly engaged by a very routine sort of format. So that's in a nutshell, UDL.
Thank you.
Universal Design for Learning. All right, so then the next strategic goal that we have is to encourage strategic use of data through thoughtful and flexible use of resources. And I'll be honest with you, this one was tough for us to sort of work through and figure out how to tie that in. So what we came up with is that this is really strategic, data-based, and thoughtful use of resources, and it's flexible use of resources as well. And quite honestly, we're in a position going into next year. We have no choice. We have to be creative. We have to be resourceful. So, for example, I mentioned Ms. Stahl and Ms. Sexton earlier today. They received a grant. They applied for a grant in late spring. And they applied through 2 different organizations. The first one, they were rejected through the first organization. Through the second, they received the grant. I believe it's $3,000, and the grant is for them to be able to be trained as train the trainers in a Calm Classroom, and then they'll be able to train our own teachers as well. They'll be able to buy resources, materials for the classroom, manuals, posters, and be able to implement Calm Classroom throughout the school. So being creative and resourceful with grants, PTO allocations, music boosters, that's really the focus here. And so we decided to stop there. So next steps really for us at the elementary school, after Mr. Knief presents the plan at our back to school opening day with teachers, is then school-based working groups will then be charged working with me and other administrators to further develop these through action steps, timelines, who's responsible for what task, and get very specific that way. And we do feel, as I was listening to Mr. Knief, we do feel that, and I feel strongly, that it takes us back to that tagline that we talked about earlier. These goals, I feel, will cultivate empowered learning and responsible citizenship. So I'm embracing this model. I'm really liking it.
Ladies, any questions, comments? No?
Thank you.
I actually have one, and I think it's a little more addressed to maybe Scott or to the EAPC even in that context. Your SP12, which deals with social emotional, I think elementary school teachers generally do that by nature, but I know that psychiatrists and school psychiatrists have generally been accountable to that to an extent. There's a shift here with what the state's doing with these new standards that they're creating, and where does that leave teachers? I know you're looking at training and PD in the responsive classroom, but where does that put teachers as far as accountability to these standards and how that's measured?
Well, I think that's a great question. I mean, ultimately, in terms of real social emotional support, that's going to happen through people who are trained to do that, through school adjustment counselors, through school guidance counselors. They're going to be responsible for maintaining, you know, in the best way possible, working with families, care providers, the social emotional well-being of students. But teachers' role, I think some of the focus here is to have teachers be cognizant of the effects that social emotional issues have on students when they enter the classroom, and then hopefully, in my mind, having some strategies to assist students in being able to focus on the educational piece, which is that's a hard task. I mean, there are some students who, if their social emotional well-being is not where it should be, it's going to be difficult for them to fully engage in what's happening within the classroom. And I think the goal of some of these programs like Calm Classroom that Ruby mentioned, and I'm in no way an expert on Calm Classroom, but the concept is to try to give the teachers some strategies on what can I do to support the students when they're with me so that they have a better opportunity to engage in the curriculum and to learn. But ultimately, so the accountability piece for teachers would be maybe attempting to try to utilize some of those strategies to support students. But ultimately, in terms of a student's social emotional well-being, that's a much larger dynamic that certainly is not the responsibility of the classroom teacher. I don't know if that answered your question, but
I guess so. I guess though, with it being a standard now, it's sort of becoming that creates an expectation. And I guess to make sure teachers are aware of where that stands as far as what the state's state's expectations go with that.
Just real quick.
absolutely.
Just one of the things too that as far as DESE's accepting teachers in their recertification process, that all teachers have at least 15 PEDs as far as the recertification process. Obviously alongside the CEPS and a lot of the training because been involved. I know from us, the MTA and the APC, we've actually have done a lot of support for ESPs and for educators in this area for social emotional supports.
Well, and it was one of the top 2 requests from the staff as far as PD goes too.
Yep.
So.
There's a big there's a safe school summit for the county. They attended that. It was pretty interesting. They had a lot of, I know trauma is the big, obviously fact. This book up there, the purple book. I know there's some schools this year is going through like a trauma sensitive school and whatnot, and I mean just in general, I think in the county, they said that Plymouth County may have the most grandparents raising children.
And this is a pretty broad topic to address. Like even from the standpoint of 2 years ago they passed legislation that every school district had to provide professional development on suicide, signs of depression, in terms of identifying students who might be concerned with suicide, and that training is required every 2 years. So we did that last year. We didn't do it this year, but now we'll have to have some training next year because it's a required element every 2 years. So I think, and Tammy's support in terms of what she was saying, I think it does come down to the accountability piece comes to having some professional development in these areas, and having some strategies in terms of the teacher could use to support a student so that they can best access the curriculum.
Well, I'd have to agree with your enthusiasm, Ruby. I think this is a great document for your staff to work with and be able to have a clear focus on what their objectives are that way.
Yeah, I absolutely think it's something that they will all embrace, and they'll all be able to identify or, you know, select an area there that they would like to collaborate with us on, and I think it's very exciting. And I just wanted to add one thing. Well, you know, there are so many other things, like Scott said earlier today, there are so many other things that we're working on constantly, you know, like the Alice piece, for example. And so but again, these are the priorities, and this we feel are the areas that we really need to focus on for a couple of reasons. This is what we're hearing from our staff, and we're getting ready to move into a new school.
Yeah.
And
I
so
think it's great. I really do. It's not like the other things aren't happening. It's just a clearer focus to the priority.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like as I was just listening to you mention, Tom, about the purple book. It's called Trauma Sensitive Schools, and we've been working. We have a crisis intervention team at our elementary school. We don't talk about that here, but we have a group of counselors, psychologists, admin, other folks, the SRO, Mr. Officer Mello. We meet regularly, and we're going through that book so that we're become more trauma sensitive, and then we're in turn disseminating that information to our teachers.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Middle school?
Motion or
Well, motion to approve, yeah?
Okay.
if the committee wills.
Certainly.
Would like to make a motion to approve the school, the school improvement plan for the elementary school.
Second.
Any other questions, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
All right, so
Thank
thanks,
you.
thanks,
you.
Ruby.
Very much.
So please welcome Middle High School Principal Janelle Holly to present the Middle High School School Improvement Plan again, aligned to the educational blueprint.
Janelle, you did a great job at graduation the other day, by the way.
So much. So the reason I'm redistributing our plan is because it's truly that. It's a living document. This evening, prior to coming before you, I met with my school council just to finalize what we had before us. And it's something that they are very passionate about, and something that we wanted to really go through and make sure that we were all in full support of what I was going to present this evening and to present to you for a motion to approve. So I do apologize for literally I got out of there probably about 6:30 and I come before you at 7. So I just want to thank the team, our team. We're so happy to have on our team faculty and parents. But one of the really important things that I think we have within our school council is our student population. We have students who are represented from the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. And we had a senior who graduated who still came back to conclude her responsibility. So I'm very excited for the students' dedication to this work as well, including my staff. So for this process, what we initially did is, after Mr. Knief left the presentation, we wanted to make sure that the school council had a time to digest all of the information before us and to do a cross comparison between our current plan as it exists between 2016 and 2017, and really strategize on how we can consolidate our information and identify what are the most critical areas that we want to move into. When we looked at the strategic priorities, some of the discussion, similar to what Ruby had with her building group, was around leveraging policy and funding and really understanding what that meant. We had a rich discussion because we felt as though many of the members of the school council felt as though that was more of a district decision, and we were able to really digest it and make them understand there's funding at all levels, and it's so important with all we've been through this year with our current budget situation that all of the decisions we make, even with our budget that we have as a school community, that we're also using the same guidance that you use every day in making the tough decisions as we move forward. So we were really happy to be able to go in and revise some of the information. So that's the true edit you'll see is within the 4th section of this work. For us, under SB 1.1, we want to fully implement the ALICE procedures. I'm excited to work along with Mark regarding this work. He's been working not just throughout our building in the middle high school, but throughout the district to ensure all of our students are safe. I think it's important that we spend as much time being proactive versus being reactive. In schools, we have a tendency to be safe, and we want to continue to have that sense of security every day when parents are sending to us their most prized possessions. We want to make sure that we're keeping them safe with us. So we want to ensure, similar to how we have fire drills that are almost like second nature to us, we want to ensure that we have the same level of understanding as we move forward with the ALICE procedures. We also want to revise and implement our advisory program. Our advisory program stems from the work we have around our accreditation process. And our school council really discussed about how do we move forward with this work. So this evening, what we did is we actually set the agenda for our September meeting, as many of them are seeking to serve again moving forward. And we also discussed our accreditation process and how those 7 areas that we will be actually reviewed against in 2023, how they could connect back to this work. So we're not working in isolated pockets saying, we have our educational blueprint in this binder and we have our NEASC accreditation information in this binder. And moving away from that, for this is just the work that we do to make our schools the best and to make sure we keep our accreditation and that to make sure our kids are successful when they leave our doors. So we really wanted to focus in on that advisory program to determine how do we make sure that every student who comes in through our doors feels connected to at least one adult in that building. And that is truly a genuine relationship. It's more than just simply saying you have this person as an advisor, but how do we know that every student feels comfortable and is able at the end of every academic year to reflect and say, I have several adults in this building that I feel connected to outside of just my advisor and outside of just my classroom teachers. So we really want to delve into that work. And we've started to look at that within our professional development this year. Again, making sure our faculty and staff understand that all of the work we do should be a continual process. And it's not, this is what we did in this academic year, but making sure they see that through a flow between the work of any academic year. The last component for SB 1.3 is to continue to use and implement PBIS throughout the school community to increase awareness of positive behaviors. There are some students who academically, they give us all they have and they succeed at a level, that a C level. And that doesn't mean that that student isn't working at 100% or isn't coming to school every day following our school motto, which is to be the best every day. So we want to ensure that students understand not just the academics are important to us, but their behaviors as well. And we want to make sure we're taking the time to recognize those behaviors outside of looking at just their academics on report cards. When students are in the hallway and they're kind, that we're stopping to say, good job, we're proud of you. But also recognizing them in the celebrations that we have throughout the year to recognize those students who've shown growth and those students who have shown great citizenship. Moving into our community engagement, if we look at SP 2.1, we want to develop and annualize events that encourage school pride among students, faculty, and families. One of the amazing things, and one of the things that drew me to Carver, not even being from this state, was just the legacy of what Carver is and the sense of community. When you come into any event, you can hear people say, I remember when I attended Carver. I remember when we did this. And we really want to make sure that as we look towards improving, that we don't throw out the things that's worked well, but we reflect on how do we enhance them and continue to make them as part of our practice moving forward. We talked about SP 2.2, which is to continue the development and implementation of substance abuse and mental health programs. Unfortunately, in many communities throughout, just not Massachusetts, but throughout the world, the opioid epidemic is something that is truly impacting us. And we want to ensure that even with the recent law that's been passed, and it's unfortunate because now we're determining that students are having access to drugs in ways that seem appealing, and that's concerning to us. We sent out messaging to our families letting them know that now it's coming in the form of drinks and lollipops and things that we necessarily would not suspect. So we really want to make sure that we're spending a lot of time to stay current and making sure that we educate our students about not making bad choices. But more importantly, we're impacting parents and educating them so that they understand what's happening out there, as they may not be connected to that world. So for us, it's a continuous process, because we know as time progresses, unfortunately, I think I heard there's even pizza with marijuana. And I'm just like, as soon as we think we have a handle on it, something new comes up where we're just like, okay, we have to truly stay current. And that's one of the things we want to do. And we want to work hard so parents don't have to necessarily work that hard. We can just provide them with the updates and the information. Our last component under community engagement is to increase our vertical collaboration. I do want to take the time to thank the 5th grade teachers who came to our building and worked this year with our 6th grade teachers. Because one of the things about being a small district is it truly allows us to be able to continue those conversations where we know the teachers who are in the 5th grade students, they're sending forth those students. So we should start to build those gaps. I mean, we are often not able to do this in very large districts. And this is something that I find to be invaluable in having a small district when those students move forward, that we don't have that learning curve that we often experience in a summertime, where teachers can share, these are the strengths and these are the areas that these students do best with. So when you move forward and you plan over the summer, please take these things into account. So I'm happy that we've started those rich discussions. I thank my department chairs who do that every day in our own building between grades 6 through 12. And we just want to continue to enhance that work as we move forward. When we move into elevate teaching and learning, we want to continue to create a consistent knowledge base and common language. So when students are moving throughout their day, they're hearing the same information. Consistency proves time and time again to impact student achievement. And we want to make sure that our teachers are receiving professional development that allows them all to be on one accord so that the students, in essence, are able to do better. We want to increase the utilization of technology by the teachers and the students as we seek to move forward with the deployment of Chromebooks now for grades 6 through 11 next year. We want to make sure that students are understanding how to utilize technology more effectively and more towards educational purposes. Oftentimes, I think some of the things that we recognize with our students is they are far more advanced, oftentimes, with how to utilize technology, both for positive and areas that we would like to encourage them not to. But we want to make sure that our teachers are staying current as well and providing them the resources that they need to move forward. Tomorrow we will actually be collecting the Chromebooks that were distributed this year. And many parents have reached out to me telling me what a phenomenal opportunity that this has been for their child and the growth they've seen. One of the mothers this evening who sits on the school council shared her student often would lose papers and they would complete homework at home, and literally by the time they left the kitchen table the night before and made it to school, the homework was missing. Now with having the Chromebook, sometimes the students don't hit submit, which they still have the assignments submitted late, but they at least can go back and retrieve the work and have it there. And she was so excited to be able to share that with me, and she looks forward to her incoming 6th grader who will now have this opportunity as well. As this year we were not able to distribute Chromebooks to our 6th graders, but next year we will be able to do so. And the last component of that is to collaborate and analyze student data to improve curriculum, assessment, and instruction. We realize that in order to elevate and to enhance teaching, you always need to make sure you're looking at your student data to determine what's the impact your curriculum is having, and looking at the assessments to see if students have a solid understanding of what the curriculum is, and then adjusting your instructional practice to make sure you're continuously enhancing for that increased level of student growth. For leveraging policy and funding, one of the things we want to do is to assess our professional development. I think oftentimes many of us have been to professional development opportunities where we get excited about the work that we're receiving, and we come back and we start to deal with some of our day-to-day, and we can't necessarily bring back some of those practices. We really want to take the time to figure out, for the cost of the professional development, how can we start to really measure if it's having any direct impact on teacher growth as well as student growth? there are some professional development opportunities that are truly focused around teachers. When our teachers are doing better, our students will do better. So we want to ensure that we're not just focusing all professional development on content specific only, but also on instructional strategies as we move forward. Once we assess what professional development has been successful for us, we want to identify and select the professional development that's going to support our strategic priorities. We want to ensure that all of the work we're doing, we come back and look at this living document to say, how does this connect with the 4 strategic priorities that we've set before us? If we can't make that connection, then we may not be able to do that work at this time. And then for us, the last component is to develop and maintain partnerships with local businesses and organizations to support those school-wide initiatives. We recognize that Brad can only stretch the dollars as far as he can stretch them. So how do we start to build relationships with some of our vendors who provide us professional development, to look for discounts, to look for ways that we can train the trainer so we don't necessarily have to bring in their consultants all the time? How do we partner with the businesses that are within our area to support some of these opportunities? It might be something as minuscule, we may say, as food, or being able to provide resources for teachers who have younger children at home, providing babysitting options or things such as that, where it doesn't necessarily always tie back to just the session, but figuring out how do we come together as a community to work on problems and find resources that are outside of just the dollar. So these are our strategic priorities and how we're looking to do the work that we move into next year. One of the things in supporting our superintendent and things that we've already started to discuss, again, is making sure we connect this work back to, right now, all of our faculty sit on the 7 standards within the NEASC accreditation, which we have coming up for a visit in 2023. So we want to connect this work and then make sure that the committees that they're sitting on tie back to our strategic priorities. And we ultimately just want to make sure that this becomes a living document where we're looking at it over a 3 to 5 year period, where we have some measurable components that we're making sure that we're reaching our targets, and we're not just checking it off to say this has been done, but what has truly been the impact on teacher growth and student achievement. Any questions? Lots of information.
Any questions, ladies?
None. Thank you.
Andrew, any questions at all?
That's Meredith.
Over here, buddy.
And have a cupcake.
And no one's questions.
Fully supportive. Good man. I'd accept the motion then.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the school improvement plan for the middle high school.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous?
All right, Jill, thank you very much. Nice job.
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, moving into handbooks. So first we'll invite up Tanya Duff, the elementary school assistant principal, who's going to kind of give us an update on the homework piece. We'd gone over our handbook revisions last time, but we're going to come back. I think we were coming back to talk about the homework issues specifically, or anything else that Steph wants to share with us.
Okay, so I shared a document with Anne-Marie, and I believe that you have all of our new changes. Is that correct?
Yep, should be linked in Drive. Yep.
Awesome. So how do you want me to go through all the changes, or do you want me to just go right to the homework?
I think we covered most of them last time, didn't we? I'm
Yeah, I think the
necessarily
question was really on the
anything
homework
different
piece.
besides that. That was just the incomplete piece, I think.
Sure. So just in one quick note, that on page 26, we're going to add a little statement about a return check policy that we're going to be having. So that's the only other.
That's something that's different from last time.
Right. That was the only thing that's different from last time. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Awesome. So moving into the homework section, you will note that on page 19 we added to the sentence, the homework process serves to teach self-discipline, time management, and responsibility. We added healthy study habits as well. And in the second paragraph, in the second sentence, we added the word independently to, it is expected that students will complete assignments independently. And in the third sentence, we added an example. For example, it's always acceptable to read directions or check for understanding, just to give the parents some helpful hints. We've made minor changes to, if you remember last time, to the homework hotline. Not everyone uses the homework hotline, so we kind of set up in our procedures section that it's up to the individual teachers at the beginning of the year to share what their procedures are for homework. We're asking parents to continue to check the nightly assignment book in grades 3 through 5, and we added the line, "This is a way to foster homeschool communication." In the fourth paragraph, we added exactly what I just said, that individual teachers will develop systems and plans to communicate homework expectations to assist students and parents. And in the fifth paragraph, we added just some parenting tips, like a quiet location, additional supplies that might be needed, and we also updated the homework expectations for reading K through 5, oral language, and mathematics. We just updated it slightly. And in the next paragraph, we added, if homework is completed inconsistently, the teacher will make every effort to communicate with parents and partner with building administration to support the student. In the next paragraph, we added, grade levels and classroom teachers will design and implement homework tasks and activities to target objectives and bolster students' understanding of taught concepts. Specific assignments will be designed under the guidance and direction of the elementary curriculum leadership. Okay. And in the final section of the homework procedure section of the handbook, we added, we took what we had, but we updated it to current practices for parents. It's just minor changes. If you noticed, just making sure, decide what time your child works, what time homework works best for your child. And some kids, like my kids, are up at 5 o'clock in the morning, so sometimes we do homework before I leave for work. We set up a friendly area, schedule a regular study time, help the students make a plan, keep distractions to a minimum, make sure your child does their own work, be a motivator and a monitor, set a good example, praise effort, not just their successes. So we just updated that. And then in the final paragraph, we added, homework should not, actually I changed it since I sent it to you, but.
A healthy balance.
Yeah, wasn't that nice?
Yeah.
So we just kind of, so if you read it, actually, maybe, it's very positive.
Yeah.
I tried to take all the language that, like, we had burden in there, just making sure that it's friendly. Because, homework sometimes is a chore for families. And we just wanted to make it friendly and to let parents know that we're here to support them as well as their child.
What?
Okay.
No.
Just the wording before.
This is much more clarifying than our last conversation,
Okay, good.
so I appreciate it a lot.
What were the minute criteria before? So it says you've admitted the minutes on homework for each grade level.
Okay.
So what were the previous minute requirements per grade level? And now saying really saying that the teachers have some option in terms of some flexibility to make a decision of what's an appropriate amount of homework.
Right, because they might give a project, right? So run over the 20 minutes that was scheduled for ELA that night, or
another day they may not give an assignment.
Right, because maybe they're trying to prep them on how to plan and how to do a long-term project.
How to break things into pieces.
Yeah. I mean, yes, sorry. I have it in here, Scott. Okay, here it is. So grade 3 before was 45 to 60 minutes per day, 4 nights a week. Grade 4 was 60 minutes. Grade 5 was also 60 minutes. And they would have to read, pleasure reading, 20 minutes a night, grades 3, 4, and 5. So that's our plan is to have reading nightly and math fluency practice nightly as well.
Well, those time frames are only speculations as a parent anyway, so it's really irrelevant to what you think it would take compared to some of those kids sitting there for hours trying to do what should take a half an hour. So I think it's a great shift.
So all the timelines have come out.
There's no timelines.
Yeah.
I mean, because if you ask a child, like, so I have 2 non-readers at home, but I mean, that's their choice. And, you know, my son will sit there for 20 minutes and read a paragraph. My daughter might get a sentence read. But so a time isn't really necessarily the best practice.
Yeah, it's not realistic. I think this is an excellent shift. A lot more clarifying than last time too. So I very much appreciate you coming back to do this. I do.
Thank you.
I did have a question.
Next year I'll know how to do this.
It was off the homework, but on page 25 you've added smartwatches to electronic devices. Is that at elementary school? You're finding that to be a concern sometimes?
Yes, I do have a couple of grade 5 students that have smartwatches and had to call parents and just say, well, we're doing the tests or putting it over here.
Thank you very much.
All right, yes.
Any other questions? Or that was really the focus of why she came back, so I appreciate that. I would accept the motion then.
I'm happy to make a motion to accept or approve the elementary school handbook revision.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any other questions? Andrew, anything? No? Stephanie? Good. Nope. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, please welcome Middle School Assistant Principal Christine Cabral to review the middle school proposed handbook changes, which is also linked in your drive folder. Good evening, Christine.
Good evening. Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very good, thanks.
I'm getting old. I need my glasses this year. So everyone has the copy of the proposed handbook changes. I just want to thank, as always, Maria Calvo volunteers to serve on the handbook committee with me, and Anthony Fulmine also served this year to review the handbook for revisions. I identified first through the handbook things that just need to be updated, such as table of contents, directory, school calendar, some of those items. We also found several typos, but I'll just go through some of the more important changes. On page 6 in the handbook, we list several strategies for success for students and families, and we need to change a few of them this year. Agenda books have, I don't know, since I've been here for 14 years, agenda books have been provided for students in grades 6 through 8. There's going to be a shift in that next year, and we're only ordering agenda books for students in 6th grade as kind of a transitional tool and organization for those students. We have found that through the use of the Chromebooks this year, 7th and 8th grade students have taken it upon themselves. Some teachers have shown them some of the online agenda options, but students have really gotten onto that, and they really have not used their agenda books this year. So the faculty council discussed it at several meetings and went back to their departments to get feedback from teachers. And overall, we've decided that 7th and 8th grade students are very comfortable using their Chromebooks as an agenda tool. 6th grade students, while they'll have Chromebooks next year, we're going to provide them with the agenda book to start out their year, and we thought like maybe by the spring we could start to use some of those online agendas with them as well and prepare them for 7th and 8th grade. But we thought just the hard copy book, with so much is new coming in the 6th grade, that we would maintain that agenda book for them.
I know a lot of the teachers give access to Jupiter Grades too, with a lot of the things they do also.
Yeah, and they also talked about using like the Microsoft Office calendar as a tool as well, and so so that there's just language in there for that. as far as the agenda books go, and then there's also language in there as far as the Chromebooks will also be one of the strategies for success, that the 7th and 8th grade students will have them. Recommended that the parents get the insurance. Chromebooks are an excellent resource for students to access, like Google Classrooms, teacher websites, and online agendas. And while the Chromebooks will be available to 6th grade students, it'll be during the school day. They won't be bringing them back and forth.
Is that a letter? Will there be a letter that goes home about that? Do you know at all? I know Janelle had mentioned something earlier, and it sounded like a parent was expecting, oh, great, my 6th grader will be able to do the same thing next year, but they're not going to have that same home access with the Chromebook.
I shared that information with the parent this evening. What I did is I took a poll of the 6th grade teachers to get their input, because we do recognize 6th grade is such a large transition from the 5th grade that we just wanted to minimize the amount of things that they would have to manage with lockers and movement of classrooms and those types of things.
I guess I was just referring to parent expectation to know that.
Yes, they have been. They will be.
Okay, thanks.
So then moving on, changing the information regarding report cards, just a small change for whatever reason. It said that you'll also be graded in phys ed. Well, why not mention all the allied arts? So we just laid out all the allied arts as well. The Crusader Pride program, I formed a committee. The Crusader Pride program has run the same. It's a awards and recognition program in the middle school at the end of each term. I've been running it this way for 14 years, and it's always similar. So I formed a committee of teachers, voluntarily, anyone that wanted to meet with me to discuss revisions for the program. And as a result of the committee conversations, we then had an advisory period for students in grades 7 and 8. I shared that agenda with 6th grade teachers and suggested they also have conversations with their students. And we got some real positive feedback from the student body about the program. Taking the feedback from the students and then the feedback from faculty and discussions, we decided that there was some redundancy in having the event 4 times a year. We thought that we could improve it by running it as a semester event instead of a quarterly event. The end of the year assembly, which is going to be on Monday at 8 o'clock, if anyone's looking for something to do Monday morning. Our final Crusader Pride assembly is Monday morning. But we thought that maybe if we had just the 2 more large-scale events. So all of the recognitions will be maintained, but it's just going to be a semester event instead of quarterly. And then the other changes that I've identified here, it's more just changing typos. There isn't any change in the way the program is run. So that's the change for Crusader Pride. Another big change is the change in the library guidelines, but that's more just a change in the way it's going to be managed. Student accessing the libraries during study periods. The change is just because we're going to change the schedule and there's no longer going to be that Block 5 Crusader period. So it's just a matter of how students check in and out of the library and how that's communicated to teachers. So that's what the changes were in library access. Now that we have the Chromebooks for students in grades 6 through 8, just before the Code of Conduct last year, we added the PBIS, be respectful, be responsible, be the best you can be, what those expectations looked like in various areas in the building. Now we've added that, our expectations for the Chromebooks. And actually when the students open their Chromebooks now, that's the screensaver. Is that going to stay the screensaver for next year?
Well, we actually changed it to say return your Chromebook by Tuesday.
Oh, right now?
But for next year, we'll push that up.
Okay. So now we've added that to the handbook. And then moving on, Saturday school detention. In an effort to give a little bit money back to the budget, I said we could afford to remove Saturday school detention from because I haven't used it, quite honestly. I haven't used it for maybe the past couple of years. I find we have in-school suspension available. It's a much more immediate consequence for students than having Saturday detention every other week. So I really haven't used it. And we also changed a few years back that students used to earn a Saturday detention if they were tardy to school 5 or more times in a term, and we reduced that to an office detention, thinking it's more of a, they still get a consequence, but it's more of a parenting thing and working with families. So we really haven't used Saturday school regularly, so we were going to eliminate that. In just adding to our smoking, possession, and or use of tobacco, I just added the high school language. Unfortunately, we are finding middle school students in possession of electronic cigarettes and or using electronic cigarettes. So just wanted to add that language in there. The tardy to school policy, I've already discussed that it's not a Saturday detention, they earn an office detention, and just changing that language there. Going on to the cafeteria policy, I don't know how we missed this. This is the cafeteria policy that is used and has been approved by you. It just didn't make that adjustment in the middle school handbook. This is how it reads in the high school handbook, and we'll just make that common. And then Tanya mentioned the fee collection. That was a change from the town of Carver. And so we've added that fee collection policy. So in the handbook we have additional policies. There's the textbook policy, and then underneath that will be the fee collection, where a fee of $25 will be imposed on any insufficient funds presented to the town of Carver or Carver Middle High School in the form of a check.
Christine, sorry to cut you off real quick. One thing can we actually add on, just add on right now, is to prices are, and I apologize, I'm just reading this the first time.
Brad's recommending a change. So they have a good...
I'm glad you're saying, because I thought we talked about this a while ago.
Just to put, and I don't, for cafeteria-wise, if we can just put a contingency in there that says school committee will review funding or review pricing every year, and it's subject to change.
Instead of having the actual price in there.
Yeah.
Because, for example, there could be a recommendation looking at next year. You could print the handbook, but in August there could be a decision that the price has to be raised.
It has to go up, yeah.
So
Okay.
then that would.
So instead of the pricing, or leave this as and then write another line at the bottom?
It'll take the pricing out. Right?
I would, yeah.
So then start with Carver Schools uses a Nutrik kids?
Nope, I would use, well, let's come back to that one.
Yeah, okay.
I'll write something quick.
Okay. And then the last piece is our technology device policy, and just some information as far as the Chromebooks go, and their students' responsibility, family responsibility as far as the use of the Chromebook. And so I'm throwing it back to you already, Brad.
So I would keep breakfasts available to all students in the middle high school from 7 to 7:25.
And take off the cost.
Yep, take out the cost, and then at the end, I would just add on to that. You can leave lunches available as well, and prices will be contingent upon school committee policy, effective for the beginning of the school year.
And then how will that be translated to parents? How will they be made aware of any costs or any changes that occur?
That's the thing, and that goes back to, do you leave pricing in there and just put the wording that it's subject to change at any time? I mean, we can send out a memo every time we do change lunch. We can post it.
Any change in lunch price would be approved by the committee. Would be brought forward to the committee, approved by you, and then communicated.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. How is that communication? So a letter would go out to parents or something then, or something on.
Every form, like a packet that goes home at the beginning of the school year. Does CAP put anything in there?
So there's something that comes in a pack anyway.
We can add it into that.
Yeah, I would delete it from there and just make it generic language. It seems to less changes for you every year.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll accept the motion.
Vice
Sure.
Chair is here. I didn't know if I...
Take it.
Attaboy.
I'll make a motion to approve the middle school handbook revisions.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
You can.
Assuming no
That's
more
okay.
questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very
And
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
please welcome middle high school assistant principal Mark Souza to review the high school changes to the handbook.
Good evening.
Hi.
Full disclosure, your list ends shortly before my list ends, so there's a little additional background information coming around that we'll get to towards the end. So first, I'd also like to thank my handbook revision committee. That consisted this year of Maria Calvo, Erin Young, Vanessa Hain, and Anthony Fulmine. We had some really deep, really quality conversations this year about some edits and changes to the handbook. So to start off at the top, we will also make the change that Brad mentioned about the cafeteria pricing. We'll make that so that it's the same from middle school to high school. There's an update section at the top. Those really are just some directory information to make sure that we're reflecting proper staffing and also just correct page numbers, dates that get updated year to year. That's all the stuff that's in that update section. And then coming down, we start our changes. So the first is our no school and/or delayed opening announcements. We just wanted to capture in there that Scott is kind enough to use his Twitter account to also put that out there to the public. So we wanted them to know that that was available through Twitter and what account they could follow to get that. On page 16, we're just changing our bullying and harassment coordinator to Christine Cabral. She actually has been the coordinator for the last 2 years, so we wanted to make that reflected accurately in the handbook. Next, moving on to page 18, under graduation requirements, a point of conversation that happened a lot this year was about our policy about being able to transfer 5 courses in from an accredited community evening school. And when do the community evening school is also an option that students can choose as summer school. So there was some conversation and some different interpretations of when does the course count as summer school, when does the course count as an evening school course. So I took the opportunity to talk to Mr. Knief and just sort of get some historical context and sort of the spirit of that rule. And the change that's represented here is just a more accurate language that represents that historical context. So you can transfer in the equivalent of 5 full-year courses from an accredited evening school. Courses taken at an accredited evening school for purposes of summer school, which means that they are taken this summer directly after the student fails the course at Carver Middle High School. Those courses will not be counted as one of the 5 transfer courses. But if the course is taken during the school year, during either the fall or the spring session at evening school, or if a course is taken in subsequent summers, that would count as one of the 5 transfer courses in. Our next change is also with graduation requirements, sort of our bulleted list here. We removed 1 recommended computer course. Unfortunately, for the upcoming school year, we will not be able to offer a course that would fit that, so we felt like the handbook should reflect that. We also added in 25 hours of community service. Most students do that in a project that's linked to their U.S. History 2 course, although they do have the opportunity, if they don't finish during their junior year during U.S. History 2, they can complete those 25 hours during their senior year.
And that is not an addition that's always been.
Right, yes, sorry.
That's always existed. It's just, for whatever reason, it just wasn't specifically stated in the handbook.
Yes, thank you.
So
So
it's not a new
the requirement is not additional. It's just we were adding it to the list to reflect that it is in fact a graduation requirement. Our next change down is just that same exact change about community evening school. It just pops up in 2 places, so we want to be consistent. On page 22, under summer school, we had labeling of E's and F's. So what we did is we removed that because through IPASS we don't assign letter grades in the first place. So there are no E's that show up on student report cards, no F's that show up on student report cards. They get whatever their average is in the course. That's what shows up as their grade. I think the purpose of the E versus the F in the past has been you needed at least a 50 in order to be eligible for summer school. So we wanted to sort of denote that by using a different letter. But some people have sort of found that a little confusing, that there's an E and I don't really know what an E is. So we figured going just simply numerical, because that's how we report on grades anyway, would be more effective. Also at the bottom, we removed the statement that a grade of 70 is the minimum requirement for continued enrollment in sequential courses. At one time, this was a fairly blanket policy across departments. As time has sort of come and gone, some departments still follow this policy, some departments don't, and that information is recorded in our program of studies. So we felt like if it wasn't something that was true across the board, it shouldn't be represented in the student handbook, but rather leave it in the course of studies, department by department, so that they could identify that requirement. Our next change is to our effort and conduct grades. And really nothing in practice is changing. This is just to reflect what is currently in practice. So our scale is a 1 through 4 that we've been using. The handbook used to reflect just a 1 through 3. And we also changed 3 from unsatisfactory to needs improvement and used 4 as that unsatisfactory category. So that's just reflecting what actually happens. On page 23, we have a grid that describes our grading system and what number grades correspond to what letter grades. Again, we're combining the E and the F into just one F category just to eliminate the E confusion. On page 23, our final examinations policy. It was a new policy last year. We went with students in grades 11 and 12 who attain a cumulative average of 90 or better and maintain attendance of 2 unexcused absences for a semester course or 4 unexcused absences for a full year course, or fewer. Those students were exempt from the final exam. Based on some feedback from the faculty, we felt like 4 unexcused absences for a semester course and 8 unexcused absences for a full year course were better numbers, were more realistic for students. And those do reflect half of the students allotted unexcused absences for the year. So we're feeling like we want to open that door for students who are using half or fewer of the unexcused absences that they're sort of allowed for the year before they would lose credit. Page 26, as Mrs. Cabral went over, we're going to add the Chromebook expectations to our PBIS section right before student responsibilities. On page 28, just a tiny little tweak to our dress code. For our portion of the dress code that talks about the length, acceptable length of skirts and shorts, we just added rompers to make sure that we were covering all apparel that could be coming to school.
Is that as in the new male rompers that are people
so there could be rompers, there could be, I've been informed that the male rompers are actually called romp hims.
Oh, yes.
So in the future we may be adding romp hims.
Oh, we haven't? Oh.
Moving on to page 40. This change is actually sort of a combination of two sections of our code of conduct that sort of go hand in hand. We have a separate alcohol listing and a drugs and other substances listing, and in the drugs and other substances listing is alcohol. So what we did is we took some of the specific language about alcohol from the alcohol listing and added it to the drugs and other substances. So no content was removed from the handbook. It was just reorganized so that everything's under one listing as opposed to having things on 2 different pages that sort of talk about the same thing. Moving on to electronic equipment use of. We are taking a step into the 21st century and removing beepers from our list of electronic devices and replacing it with smartwatches. And we also are deleting the example of iPads used during passing time because our current policies actually allow the use of iPods and some electronic devices during passing time. Food and drink for students. We just wanted to add in that this policy is in effect unless it's part of a classroom activity. Some teachers have brought up, we have advisory days and they feel like, I want to bring in donuts for my kids, or I want to bring in this, or I want to bring in that, and sort of make advisory more of a homey setting. And we certainly want to encourage that. And some people have felt like, can I do that? Am I breaking the rule if I do that? So we wanted to make it clear that if it's a classroom activity, that's absolutely allowed and encouraged. Next, games, gambling, and card playing. We decided to sort of boil this one down to just say gambling of any kind is prohibited. Some of the conversation there was that there are students who at lunchtime like to sit and play different card games that are just recreational, and we didn't see a problem with that. Our next on page 41 is another sort of combining of two separate listings in the Code of Conduct. We had an assault listing as well as a physical violence listing. So again, there's no content that's been removed from the handbook. It's just been reorganized so it's under one listing, so things are more in one place. Again on page 41, provoking violence and fighting, this is a change to reflect practice. Students have received consequences for if there were some physical violence in school. Students who recorded that and or posted that have faced consequences. So we wanted to make sure that we reflected that in the handbook. And that's something that we address with students, that you may not be engaged in a fight, but if you're there making a video, if you're posting it, and that's sort of bringing attention to that sort of behavior and sort of showing some implicit support, and we can't be okay with that. Page 42, a tweak to senior privilege. We felt it was important that senior privilege is a privilege, and it's something that should be earned, and that being a respectful and responsible citizen at Carver Middle High School should be a part of earning that privilege. So we were adding to the requirements for senior privilege that a senior could lose their senior privilege for the remainder of a term if during that term they were issued an in-school or an out-of-school suspension for a behavior infraction. On page 47, we wanted to reflect the update in the athletics fee to $150 per sport with a $750 family cap. On page 53, the heading reads a little funny and maybe misleading about what the change is. Really, we're adding something to our list of excused absences. We're adding college visits up to 2 during your junior year and 2 during your senior year. We hadn't traditionally excused college visits, but we felt like it was important for students, A, to go out and visit the places that they're going to go and pursue further learning, and that for those schools that they've really identified, I have a strong interest in this school, there's a difference between visiting a school on the weekend and visiting a school during the week when classes are in session, and you have the opportunity to go in and audit a class, and you can do some more things during the week that you can't on the weekends. So we wanted to sort of open the door to students to feel comfortable doing that without taking an unexcused absence as a hit. We have an update on page 66 to the parking fee. That'll change from the current $10 fee to next year's $50 fee. Page 67 has our textbook policy. There's some change in language there that just reflects the students in grades for this handbook, students in grades 9 through 11 having Chromebooks, and students in grade 12 having access to some Chromebooks and other devices through the library. So we wanted to make sure that we had some language covering student responsibility with those school resources as well as the textbooks. So that's where your list ends and my list continues. Like Ms. Duff and Ms. Cabral have mentioned ahead of me, we will also be adding the return check fee policy from the town of Carver. That'll be reflected in our additional policy section like it is in the middle school handbook. The next 2 items and last 2 items have to do with field trips. The first is sort of more overarching. Currently, we have a statement about field trip participation that says participation in field trips is subject to approval by administrators and teachers. Students' attendance record may render students ineligible to attend field trips. We felt like that was really broad. It didn't give teachers any guidance about what sort of things might preclude a student from participating in a field trip. It didn't give students any sort of idea about what could preclude them from a field trip. So we wanted to give them a little more direction. So the proposed change in language is in place of that blurb that I just read, any student in violation of the student handbook sections titled Student Responsibilities Code of Conduct or Attendance Policy will receive consequences that may include removal from a field trip. So that's just, we wanted to give them more direction on there's a possibility that if you're slated to go on a field trip and you're not fulfilling your responsibilities in school and you're not representing the school effectively in school, you may not have the opportunity to represent the school outside of school. And sort of following that, we have a senior grad bash policy agreement, which was sent around to you before I started. So this is a document that just seeks to be really upfront with students and parents about our grad bash trip. So our grad bash trip is a senior tradition. It's a 4-day trip that our seniors have the opportunity to go on. They go down to Florida, they visit the Disney theme parks. The actual grad bash event is held at Universal. It's a great event that the students love. They fundraise for it, they make payments throughout the year. And it's always an outstanding experience. There have been some hiccups in the past few years, so we just wanted to communicate better with students and parents about sort of the expectations of, again, students fulfilling their responsibilities in school in order to be able to represent us, not just out of the school, but out of the state. And also the financial commitment that comes along with that. So on one sheet of that is just the policy agreement, separated into some sections. So the first section is the chemical health policy. If a student is in violation of the chemical health rule that's in our handbook, they would go on a 60-day social probation. And if at a second point in the year a student violated that policy again, then they would be removed from the grad bash field trip. Attendance policy, there would be a series of warnings. If attendance were a problem with students, they would start to receive warnings about their attendance. They would, following our normal consequences separate from grad bash, we would receive those consequences as well. At some point, if the behavior didn't change, if the attendance didn't improve, that could eventually lead to not going on to the grad bash trip because it does require missing a couple days of school, and if attendance is a problem in the first place, we shouldn't be pulling you out of 2 days of your education. And then the behavioral policy sort of mirrors what we said about all field trips, in that students in violation of the code of conduct will receive some warnings that may result in removal from the trip. And the blurb that's in bold is that this all gets a little accelerated after the final parent meeting in March. And if those policies become a concern, if a student were to violate one of those policies after that final meeting in March, the trip is in April, that depending on the severity of the incident, we may not have the opportunity to first offer a warning before making the decision to remove a student from a trip. That process would be accelerated after that parent meeting. And then the financial portion on the back just states that there's an initial deposit of $150 in October, and that deposit is non-refundable unless the school cancels the trip. Also, final payment is due this coming year, Wednesday, February 7th. And if after that date a student decides not to attend the trip or is removed from the trip for one of the reasons on the front of the sheet, then the entire cost of the trip is non-refundable, and parents do have the option to purchase private travel insurance through a private provider. So those are the pieces for senior grad bash that we just wanted to document and make sure everyone was aware of up front.
So clarifying question on that.
Yes.
Is the grad bash, the senior grad bash piece is that actually a handbook revision, or are you just making the committee aware of these and it's not going to be stated specifically this way in the handbook?
That was my question.
So the request has been that this be entered into the handbook, but at the committee's recommendation, we could always not include this in the handbook and just have it as a separate form that's just part of the grad bash experience for students, and that when they express an interest in going on grad bash, then they would be provided this information.
So how about I take a motion on that, and then we can move forward with any discussion of what you'd like to do.
I'll make a motion to discuss the approval of the high school handbook revisions.
Second.
Okay. So comments, questions?
I just have one quick question. I'm not sure if it's for, well, I'm assuming it's for Mark regarding the Chromebooks. Has there been a lot of damage to the Chromebooks this past year?
There's been some. One of the things that we've seen a lot are 5.6 TY. Yes.
I can actually answer that.
Sure, go ahead.
So we have noticed that the particular model that we got in our new RFP that Brad just put together for us is for a different model, but there have been some key issues around gaming, and so fortunately those have been covered by the warranty, but we also required parents to get insurance. So tomorrow when we do the collection, that will give us a good opportunity to kind of get a handle on that. I appreciate the fact that there is language in the middle high school and high school handbooks that Christine and Mark put in. I know the tech department proposed language for the elementary, which I'm sure you'll be putting in, that we proposed last month, putting into your handbook, just to cover us as the presence of technology kind of continues to be more ubiquitous. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm still going back to the qualifying question of whether this grad bash policy is a handbook policy versus just forms. I think it's a great discussion to have with the community so that they're aware of this. So I'll register my concern about making this a handbook policy, but that doesn't mean we don't make it a handbook policy. My concern would be that we would set ourselves up for every field trip wanting to have a handbook policy for their field trip in the handbook, which would make it in some ways unmanageable. As long as this policy is consistent with the stated handbook policy, there's no reason why the school can't implement this policy but not necessarily make it a handbook piece. And then small pieces, like obviously you wouldn't want to have dates,
sure,
or those types of things in something that's going to go into the handbook. You know, so then the question. So that's really my question, is that are we opening ourselves up to every field trip saying we're going to develop our specific policy? Right. So that...
Well, I would move it along by leading to the sense that this is specifically for seniors, so should be given specifically to seniors as opposed to something generic in the handbook. I don't mind the language of it, but I don't think it would need to make the handbook.
Yeah, so as long as it's consistent with the handbook field trip policy, which want to read us, you had said that policy prior, if you
absolutely
read it.
So would you like the field trip policy in total, or just the change?
The change. No, sorry, in total. In total
okay.
With the change.
Field trips are taken to enrich learning experiences. Students must obtain written parent and or guardian consent prior to the scheduled trip date and are subject to school rules and regulations while on a field trip. It is the student's responsibility to make up all missed work. Field trips are discouraged during the last week of each semester. Any student in violation of the student handbook sections titled Student Responsibilities Code of Conduct or Attendance Policy will receive consequences that may include removal from a field trip. Any student that is not a registered member of a field trip who is identified as present at the destination will be considered truant from school and will not be allowed credit for work or assessments missed.
I think that policy covers this statement, and I think grad bash is very specific.
And I agree, and I think that's the kind of the problem that you will run into is certain field trips are going to have specific issues centered around them that may not
tie to all field trips.
Right. So I see this as specific and a great policy, but not necessarily for the handbook.
Like even the chemical health rule, and I'm not saying I don't support it.
Sure.
You know, so but if a student's placed on social probation, the concept of the social probation is they're not allowed to participate in extracurricular activities. But if it's a field trip during the school day, it is a curricular activity that a student cannot be denied from based on social probation. So you start getting yourselves into a gray area where someone else can say, well, this kid had a chemical health violation, and the grad bash policy says they can't go because they had a chemical health violation. So I want to put that into my field trip. The kid had a chemical health violation, so I don't want them to go. But we really can't deny them that. Right. So I feel like this is a separate document that's consistent with the policy that's stated in the handbook. But again, I defer to the will of the committee.
Questions?
I agree.
Is there a packet that the students are given for Grad Bash?
Absolutely.
So I would say that it should go in that packet.
Include that in that packet.
Yeah, versus being in the handbook. I agree.
James, are we separately voting to keep that out of the handbook? Is that what we're doing?
I don't think it's not necessarily in right now, is it?
No.
So you're voting on the packet.
Well, no, but your motion, you made a motion to discuss this. I think the motion is really to approve it, but there might need to be a modification to approve it, minus the senior grab bash.
Yeah.
So a couple questions I had about little things in here. Okay. College visits. You have up to 2 junior year and 2 senior year. I think that's really vague, because what would you say is a college visit?
So typically when a student sets up a college visit and they go and they have an actual advisor from the college that sort of shows them around, they have some documentation from the school that says I was at this school on this date, so that would need to be in place to qualify as a college visit.
I would probably put that somewhere.
Absolutely.
Okay. Just because you want the clarity.
Absolutely.
And then there is the process of how far in advance do they have to get that college visit approved. Right? I mean, if they're going on Friday and they come to you Thursday and they say, hey,
I'm not going to be here tomorrow.
Susan, how you doing? I'm not going to be here. I need you to sign this or something. You know, that's not the policy. The policy should be they have to come with you 2 weeks in advance, whatever you'd like. But just to make sure that that's cleared up, I think. Because I think it's a great idea, but I just think it needs some clarity.
Absolutely.
Senior privilege. Just because I'm curious, said that there'd be consequences if basically these things aren't met. What are the consequences? They get it taken away, right?
So senior privilege, if the bulleted items, so if those things happen within a term, a student loses their senior privilege for the remainder of that term. At the start of a new term, each student has the opportunity to start fresh and start with senior privilege.
Okay, so they start fresh, okay.
Yeah, each term they start fresh and have an opportunity to use their senior privilege again.
Has senior privilege been an issue with people continually feeling that they have it when they don't have it and using it when they're not supposed to use it?
Yes.
Okay, do you think they're, to make it easier on yourself? I mean, this is, like you just said, a privilege. So at the end of the day, I mean, should there be more consequences to somebody going above and beyond and feeling like, hey, I'm all powerful, I'm a senior?
Sure. So if a student leaves the building and sort of states, you know, on paper somewhere states their reason for leaving the building as I'm using senior privilege, and they don't have that, they do face consequences, you know, along the lines of truancy or along the lines of leaving the school property without permission, depending on where exactly that student goes. So they do face essentially class cutting or truancy from school discipline if they try to use the privilege when they don't have it.
All right, my last one was, you mentioned, I think at 22, in regards to the 70.1 and some departments not grade of a C- is the minimum requirement, and some departments aren't following that and some are. How did that happen, and how does that get classified?
So I don't know all the background on that. I do know that, for instance, in the math department, at one point, if you didn't earn, so if you passed Algebra 1 with a 62, and your sophomore year you could take geometry, but then in order to take Algebra 2, because that's a course of sequential nature, you would have to, even though you passed Algebra 1, at some point you would have had to have taken a summer school for Algebra 1, and you would have had to score over a 70 there in order to move forward and study more algebra. So that at one point that was the policy. At some point, to my knowledge, before I started working in Carver, that stopped being the policy. So I just wanted to make sure that was reflected here. I honestly don't know the history of how, when some departments stopped enforcing it and when some did.
So, but in history, that might not be the case. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
And so I can give background on that. So the background piece of that would be that, you know, ultimately the prerequisites for courses have changed over time since I've been there, really. And so it's always kind of been an ongoing discussion of what do you need to go on to the next level of a course? What do you need to be in an AP course? What do you need to be in an honors course? There's always this discussion around that, and it's moved a lot over the years. But that actually happens through the program of studies piece. So that's done through the approval of the program of studies, not in the handbook. So this is probably old language that's been there forever, saying that you need to get a 70 in a summer school course to go on to the next level. And really it's inconsistent with the program of studies. So I think this is taking that out is just a cleanup. It's not because there's been something happening that people just went on their own and did their own thing, or there was some other discussion. Does that make sense? There's really the discussion of prerequisites for courses should really be through the development of the program of studies, and they're clearly delineated in the program of studies. So when kids go to select courses in the high school, when they get the program of studies book, that book says to the prerequisite for I don't have the book in front of me, so I might be making this up. The prerequisite to be in honors chemistry was a 80 or better in biology.
And does that get determined year to year?
Yeah, that's reviewed on a yearly basis.
Okay.
Just a quick question or a point of clarification between Andrew and Mark. So, Andrew, you're asking if a 2-week notice could be put in about visiting the colleges, or
Well, I'm
you
just
want
asking
that?
for some clarity as to, because all it is on here is just that they're allowing 2 as a junior and 2 as a senior, just so that someone would know beforehand, for I would think for Mark and for just his sake, as far as knowing, okay, well, you can't just come to me on Thursday at 4 o'clock and say, hey, I need you to sign this because I'm leaving and I'm going to be at, wherever on Friday.
Is
so
that
just be a little bit more buttoned up, I think.
is that problematic? Does it happen often?
So we haven't excused college visits before, so students really haven't informed us very much that I'm going on a college visit. They're absent on that day, and then when we follow up and say, hey, you were absent yesterday. Oh yeah, I was on a college visit. So I honestly don't know. I haven't had a chance to sort of experience that.
Okay. I only ask because I just know at times you think or apply perhaps to 3 to 4 colleges. You see this one, you see that one, you got money from, college A, you really want college B, and all of a sudden college C says, we had a cancellation, can you come in tomorrow at 4 and have a meeting? And I think that would create an issue, especially if you're getting a college that you're going to get a substantial grant or financial aid from, and I can't go, or I'm going to get an excused absence, or there's going to be an issue and I can't get it signed. So I'm not sure if it needs to be you need a 2-week notice. I think on that aspect there should be a little more leeway. That's all.
I think we can clarify this and refine it really easy by adding a word like an official visit, which means they have to have something. So regardless of the time frame, it has to be an official visit, otherwise it's not going to be comparable.
And ultimately being consistent with the rest of the policy. If you have a legal obligation, you probably do know that in advance, but I mean, historically in the building, someone may come in the day after if they were at court the day before, and bring in their notification from the court and say, I was at court yesterday, and then we make it an excused absence.
Sure.
So we don't have an expectation that they're giving us that legal notice at some time period in advance. Though, probably a poor example because they probably have that legal notice in some time period in advance. But obviously illness or something like that.
So I'm kind of concerned with the motion that Andrew made and where we're going. Just to go back over what we've talked about, you had said that because if we're gonna vote on this, you had mentioned adding the part about the return check policy like the elementary school is going to do.
Yep.
You had talked about
the edit to the field trip policy.
The edit to the field trip policy, not adding the senior. To the yearbook. Changing the language for the lunch also to accommodate what the other schools are doing.
Yep.
And adding the word official, I guess, if everybody's okay with that, to the college visit part.
College visit, sure.
So those were there any other changes that we would be approving that we didn't touch base on that aren't there yet?
Nope.
So those are so if we approve, it's under those contexts too, within what we're talking about. And Anne-Marie, I'm not sure if his motion is, I think you said to discuss approving it, so I don't know if...
To discuss
I think we need to modify or amend that motion to make it an official approval.
We'll move to approve the high school handbook revisions.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any further discussion at all? Thank you, Mark, very much. Well done. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on.
Moving on. So in your packet, I've just put two pieces of information that I just thought would be interesting information from the committee to have. I'm not looking to make an extensive presentation tonight on these items. One is the future plans for our graduating senior class. So each of our seniors are asked through our Naviance program to just say what school they plan on attending or what they plan on doing next year. So we have a list of each graduating senior and their plans for next year, whether it be work, college, the military. Though I was looking through here, and then I don't know if any of the military ones are listed, but we actually have 6 students going on to some military branch. So this may not have every student in the senior class because they may not have done it. We try to get everyone to do it as one of the requirements before leaving, but I was looking through. I know there's some holes in here, but it gives you a sense of what students are planning on doing in terms of postgraduate plans.
What's that second numerical column? The first one is clearly 2017.
I believe that is their student ID.
Just a school number.
Yeah,
okay.
That's a student ID.
All right.
It's not tied directly into anything that's particular to what colleges or what their plans are after college.
Sure.
And then the other piece I gave you, because I think it's a good piece to look at, is college acceptances. I know it's turned the wrong way, so you got to turn your head a little bit. But this actually is a list of all the schools that our students were accepted as graduating seniors. Now, they may not be attending these schools because students apply to a wide variety of schools, but it gives the committee a little bit of a flavor on the types of schools in which students were accepted during this past year. It's not in here, but I just did a numerical breakdown of we have 57% of students going to 4-year colleges, 31% going to 2-year colleges, 12% going into the military or the workforce. The military is actually high for us this year. So of that 12%, half of it is students going into the military. So there's only 6% who currently are not planning on pursuing any formal education through a 2 or 4-year college. As I said, my goal on this was just to give you a sense of the range and the types of schools that students were accepted to, and I thought it might be a nice piece for us to look at each June to kind of have that comparison in terms of schools.
I think it was great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't know if there's any other questions about that. It's just just informational piece.
Pretty cool data.
Yeah.
Even if it's on a slide.
Yeah, even if it's on a slide. All right, budget transfers. Brad has some final pieces for the FY17 budget to close it out.
And before we get into that, I just want to give you guys a couple quick updates. Grants for FY18 are projected to come in at roughly 10% lower than FY17. I still haven't seen Carver exact numbers yet, but that's what the projections we're getting. I know Meredith working with Title IIA, we were worried about that getting actually totally axed. That is going to be funded next year, but going forward,
it's already been approved.
It's
yeah,
for
the
one more year
SCA
at
got
least.
there.
Really?
Yeah, so Mass got it, but they think FY19 we won't get it.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, but one more year.
Yeah.
Excellent. Very nice.
So PD is still good to go for next year in terms of Title IIA.
Very nice.
I want to thank the Finance Committee for approving $6,000 to go to the student activity funds. I know I mentioned before we made a couple motions last time to move some money around. We had a couple negative balances in a couple accounts, and they were nice enough to give us $6,000 to close those out, and we're moving forward to no more negatives. We're moving forward, and we're out of the business of negatives, and we have new policies and procedures in place to make sure that doesn't happen. As Meredith mentioned before, the bids are going to go out next Monday for our Chromebooks. We should have the winning bidder by the first week of July. And that was it. And then the budget update. If you guys look in Drive, the Excel document on the first tab, you will see the revenue expense summary for FY17 up to last Monday. The second tab is the full transfers in every individual account that we're going to be requesting tonight. And the third tab is the highlights, which I'll go over quickly. So you'll see the first one, the teacher salary, and then the third one, classroom aides. What we were able to do on that, you'll see like there was a big money shift in terms of a lot more being charged to the salary for the regular teachers and more money being freed up, more money being charged to the aides, more money be putting back in the teacher fund. And what we were able to do is, one thing, in my former district, we had to stretch grant money out as far as possible. And one thing I noticed when I first started here was we put a lot of money in terms of teaching in Title I instead of paraprofessionals. And when you put in for a teacher, you actually have to pay your MTRS amount directly, so it comes off the grant. So when we made the flip-flop, we actually recouped $6 grand that we were able to use in our operating budget to offset costs. So that's why you'll see a couple major transfers there in terms of the 85 and 91,000. But what it essentially is it freed up 6,000 for our operating budget. District-wide special ed contracted services, we're going over on that line, $6,000. I know we have a fair amount budget next year, but in terms of all sped accounts, we always know we are on pins and needles depending on where they're going to fall. The fourth one on that, the elementary English textbooks and related, this was a savior. In terms of the budget, we had 15 grand that we're turning back over to other expenses, and this is based off a prepayment that was made last fiscal year to cover textbooks that we thought we were going to be able to pay in FY17. They actually got funded and fully covered in FY16. Again, I wasn't really here for that, but that's how it all played out. This is the huge one, the 3,300 line, the special ed transportation contracted services. If you look at our total budget, the original was just over $100,000. When we actually look at what we're going to spend for this school year, it's going to close out at $177,000. So that's a line item that was $77,000 over what was originally projected. And this doesn't even include one special ed bill that we got for $75,000. That's actually a school choice bill, so it'll be covered by another district. But again, another item of concern, special ed transportation. One of the problems is sometimes a child may move from one higher tuition placement to a lower tuition, but what you fail to realize is you may add on, you may save $10,000 in tuition, but you add on a new route for the transportation that costs you $30,000. So it's actually a net loss of $20,000. Any extra dollar we've been saving in FY18 we made a motion last time to kick it into SPED contracted services. So just again, a line item that we have to pay close attention to going forward. The third grouping is all our utility lines. We made a motion, I think, 3 or 4 months ago to move money into those accounts. I was worried we were going to be short. We actually ended up with a positive balance of over 23,000, roughly 24 to the positive. So again, move to line items that were in the negative. The fourth group is all maintenance items. Dave wasn't happy with me when I had to attack his budget, but as you can see, with not only the $77,000 in special ed contracted services, but in the tuition line we'll get down to later, there was a lot of negatives that we had to clear out. And one item we were able to recoup and not really spend too much on was maintenance items. Part of it is a big help is with the new elementary building coming online, we're able to get away with a little bit more things than what we would if the building was going to stay on board for another 5-10 years. The fifth group is health insurance. I think we made a couple motions in terms of moving funding around for that. We are actually over by 14,000 back to the good, to the positive, to address the shortfall. So that again was a conservative approach that we overestimated, but again it came out to help us in the long run. And the last one again is special ed. If you look at the tuitions, those two lines totaled over $80,000 that we were short. We've already addressed a lot of the overage in circuit breaker, but this was in the normal operating budget. Again, based on tuitions, movements, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. The majority of sped, I'm always on the negative side everywhere I go, but that's the way it is. But the importance of this is to mention, we were able to cover the majority of, if you look at overall sped cost, it was over $80,000 we were short in tuitions, but the majority of the coverage came from circuit breaker. Circuit breaker we're only carrying over a $25,000 to $30,000 balance on, so we undercut circuit breaker next year in the budget, as you guys know, by roughly 150 grand. The goal is to build that back up so you have a good reserve account that when things happen during the school year, you can offset it with that money and not have to do a reduction in force on any staff member that will impact you that school year. Then you address it the following year. So again, the town thankfully put forward the circuit breaker special reserve account that'll help out next year, because I do know a couple of our placements are already up by $10,000 a pop. But that is where that is for this fiscal year. There'll be one more change in August when we close out the official books, but this is the major movement as all salary lines. We've all paid out all the salaries for the rest of the year. So if there's any questions on that, feel free to please let me know. But I'm happy. It's one of the exciting times, just closing out the books, but you close one out and you open up the next year, and it's a lot of fun and exciting. So.
But based on where we were this year, closing out and getting through the year is viewed as a positive.
Definite positive.
No, and I thank you guys for taking a conservative approach, because I know we cut a lot out, but at the same time, if we didn't take that, we'd be sitting here $50,000 short, let's say, trying to scratch our heads of where we find the money. So.
Well, we're ending, but we've got a large climb ahead of us, so a lot of work to do.
Well, I'd like to make a motion. James, I'd like to make a motion. And I'll move to approve the budget transfers as presented this evening.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 It's unanimous. Thank you, Brad, very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a few recommendations tonight. First, Recreation Committee appointments. So the school committee appoints 2 people to the Recreation Committee. Both of these people are currently on the committee, Mary Ross and Kelly Lynn DeCarly. Neither of them are here this evening, but they have sent us letters saying that they would like to continue on as members of the Recreation Committee. Just as a little background, I know we had some discussions about recreation, and so Michael Schultz and Mike Santos have had a couple meetings since our last meeting with the members of the Recreation Committee, and I do think they all are moving forward and working together in terms of increasing and expanding our recreation services for the entire community. It's not really for the students. It's really students will be part of it, but it is for the community. And I know there was some concerns about how that was originally rolled out, but I think they've ironed some of those things out, and I think everybody's been working together. And Mary and Kelly Lynn are on board for that. So I guess we would be looking for a recommendation to have them continue as the official appointees from the school committee, if the committee so wishes.
I'd like to make a motion to support the appointments of Mary Ross and Kelly Lynn DeCarly to the Recreation Committee.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any comments, questions?
I guess we'd like to thank these lovely ladies for signing up again.
Very much so. Yeah.
Indeed.
Yes, sometimes we've struggled to have recreation representatives.
Well, and I think also noting the fact of what Scott just mentioned with the additions and what's going on with the town and what they voted at town meeting, they're biting off more too. So, an extra thanks and their efforts, because I think ultimately when they can pull those perspectives together and they can all sit and get a common idea, that it's going to move forward really well. So, with that said, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
The next piece is school committee meetings for next year. I'll be looking to take a look at these times and then maybe a motion to approve them. The only question mark on here, which is a question mark we've had in the past, is October, about because the second Monday is always Columbus Day. So is the will of the committee to go on the first Monday or the third Monday, and then ultimately, do we still want to do Monday nights at 7 o'clock? Really, you could change all those things, but we're proposing the second Monday in the rest of the months is the second Monday of the month. So any concern one way or the other, will we go October 2nd or October 16th? My thought is October 16th would be better. It's a long break day between October 2nd and November 13th, but really it doesn't matter.
Well, I guess you kind of formulated this, so if your suggestion is to switch to the 16th, does anyone have any objections to that?
I think that's what we've done the last couple. I think the last couple of months we've done. The last couple of years, later. The committee has done the third Wednesday. I'm sorry. I guess it's after 10 o'clock. No, not yet. It's 9:59. So we've done the committee, I believe, over the last several years has done the third Monday in October. But I figured we'd offer that choice up.
Okay. So I'd accept the motion.
So we're going with the 16th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting scheduled for the 2017-2018 school year.
With the October 16th.
With October 16th going forward.
You want a second?
A second?
I will second that.
Any questions or discussion at all? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous.
And then the last one, we do have one field trip request for an out-of-state field trip. The girls basketball coach John Rosen would like to take the Lady Crusader basketball team to Mount Monadnock in New Hampshire and Monkey Trunks in Zip Lake Park, New Hampshire. So it's an out-of-state field trip. The date of the trip is July 21st. So I would support supporting the trip.
All right. And I'll make a motion to approve the field trip for the LCB girls to New Hampshire.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Any questions? Comments?
Yeah, do they need chaperones?
It says 2 to 3.
Yep.
They may
Coaches.
Be,
I think it'll be the coaches.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's a 15-hour trip there. They're leaving
okay.
at 5 a.m.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. And to reports from the school committee.
If I may.
Please.
I attended the Carver Educational Foundation fundraiser at Pins over the weekend. Yes, it was exciting. They did a lovely job. It was great.
Yeah, it went really well. And Andrew attended well, and so did Stephanie. So we're glad to see the members of the committee there. And we raised approximately $1,700 through the event. We had 100 people attend with a $1,700 fundraising effort.
That's a wonderful start.
Did you get your T-shirt?
I did.
Excellent. Stephanie, Andrew?
Tell me if I have any of the people wrong. I think I have the people I asked to make sure we had the list. So if I forget someone, jump in, please. Okay. But the people that put that together were Bree Wall, Michelle Nickerson, Mike Schultz, Paula Foley, Leslie Ritz, and Kate Donovan. If I'm missing anyone, let me know.
And Scott Knief.
Scott Knief.
Oh, it's always Scott Knief. Right? but those things don't happen without people stepping up. So I just wanted to make sure to recognize those people individually. So.
Nope, that's great, and they did a great job putting the event together and organizing it. And our long-term goal as a foundation is we're looking at maybe 3 fundraising events a year. One in the fall, one in the winter, one in the spring. And we were really happy with the turnout because June's a hard month. We know that there's a lot of things going on in June, so we were happy to have close to 100 people attend.
I guess I'd like to say that I'm happy to be here as a full participating member, and I look forward to
official welcome.
Yeah, being an official, full-fledged member of the school committee. So thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Nice to have you.
Thank you.
Well, we will not meet again before summer break, so hope that everybody has a safe and happy summer. Enjoy it as much as you can. I think for staff, especially elementary staff, be a great perspective coming back in September and seeing how much progress is made on that building. That'll be a definite difference by the time they come back after that. So I hope everybody enjoys themselves, and I would accept a motion to move on to our executive session.
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting and move to executive session to conduct strategy session in preparation for negotiation collective bargaining with the union personnel.
With not to return to open session.
Not to return to open session.
I will second that.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? It's a roll call.
Roll call.
Yep.
Oh, did I say my name? Okay. Well, yeah. I haven't done one before. Sorry. Stephanie Clardy?
Yes.
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 You don't have to necessarily.
Unanimous.
Oh, okay.